IB Nation, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. It's Wednesday, it's hump day, it's Buy So Hold day. We're going to break down a little bit about this Notre Dame-Florida State game. We're going to talk some recruiting. We're going to have a jam-packed day, and that guy right there, Trevor Trowbridge, is being a trooper today, y'all. I gave him the opportunity to not do a show tonight because he is very under the weather. But he basically told me, and it didn't say it quite this way, but the intent behind it was rule number 76, no excuses, pod like a champion. So that's pretty much what Trevor said to me today. So he is here today, ready to talk about the Notre Dame. I think if we were doing something other than buy so hold, he might have maybe taken the day off, but I don't think Trevor could turn away from buy so hold, man. But hey, I'm really looking forward to diving into this matchup. We're going to talk a lot, Trevor, today about Notre Dame against Florida State as opposed to Notre Dame versus Florida State. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to sit here and try to tell y'all, boy, this is a game you got to be worried about. Look, this is a really bad football team. And this is going to be one of those, what are we going to learn about Notre Dame moments, more so than, gee, this matchup is super intriguing and is going to prepare you for XYZ down the road. It's just not that. And so we'll talk about what kind of we're looking for. We're going to do a little recruiting talk here because it's a big recruiting weekend for Notre Dame. I'll get you guys prepped for all of that. And then, of course, Trevor, buy so hold at the end. So jam-packed show. Appreciate y'all with us getting started late here today. Just I got a lot of stuff I'm getting caught up on here with me and my family. So we appreciate your patience. But I am here, locked and loaded, and ready to talk about Notre Dame, Florida State. Trev?
We're ready, man. I'm excited to jump into it. I apologize in advance that I sound like, the voice is leaving me, but we're here, man. I wasn't able to make the shows yesterday because we were down pretty bad, but I gotta get my time in and talk some ball with you, Brian. You know how that goes for me. But it's just with the playoff rankings coming out, talking Notre Dame, one and only night game of the season, had to be on here to talk about it. But before we dive into everything, I wanted to talk to you guys real quick about MyBookie. Even though I sound awful, it's not going to prohibit me from putting down some bets with MyBookie this weekend, right? We've talked ad nauseum about how awesome college football is going to be now that the playoff rankings are out, and there's no better sports book to go with than with MyBookie. They have risk-free MyBookie Thursdays, which tomorrow night you have the Bengals taking on the Ravens in Baltimore at M&T Bank Stadium. It's going to be an awesome one, guys. The last game went into overtime. I expect this game to be closer, just like the first one was. I mean, last year, I think Joe Burrow injured his wrist for the season in a night game against the Ravens. So it's going to be a little something extra going into this game for Burrow and the Bengals, right? But make sure that you enroll in their loyalty rewards program. They reward you and give you extra cash for just playing and just putting down some bets. And speaking about extra cash, what you do is when you sign up, use promo code IRISH, IRISH, when you sign up, and it's going to give you a deposit bonus. They're going to double the amount of money that you're putting in. So just for signing up, they're going to give you some free money to throw some bets down with. But just make sure you guys check out MyBookie. It's the sports book that gives you guys control and rewards you for every moment of play.
Trev, speaking of results for this weekend, Notre Dame enters this weekend's game against Florida State. You did mention it is a night game. It is a 7:30 game. It will be on NBC. It's Notre Dame's lone home night game of the season. And look, this is not a very good football team, Trevor, and I'm not going to try to convince people they are. This is a 26.5 point spread, and the over-under is only 42.5, which means they expect Notre Dame to score a decent amount and Florida State not to score a whole lot. I mean, basically, that's what they're trying to say. Because this just isn't a good team, and we could talk a lot about, why, and we'll have that postmortem about Florida State at some point in time after the season. But the reality is, for a while there, Trevor, I think we looked at this game and said, well, look, when Florida State figures it out, when Florida State wakes up, when Florida State does this, then it's going to really, they're going to be dangerous. And the reality is they've played 9 games, and They just haven't woken up. And if Miami, here's what, if Miami wasn't enough for them to get up and really play well, I think they played hard, then they're just not gonna. If Clemson at home wasn't enough for them to kind of get up and play well, again, I think they played hard. I just don't think they played well. Then this football team just isn't. This is who they are at this point in time, with all the injuries and just the way the team chemistry is, all those different things, Trevor. This is just who Florida State is. And we have to accept that. And we're not going to sit here and try to spin it because, like Marcus Freeman said all the right things on Tuesday, and he's not wrong. There is talent on this football team. This is a talent, especially on defense, that has legitimate talent on that side of the ball. But that doesn't make them a good team. And when USC went 4-8 a few years ago, they weren't a terrible team, but they had some talent. They had NFL players on their, like high-level NFL players on their roster. And that's the reality is, yeah, there's talent on this team, and Coach Freeman is correct. If you try to sleepwalk through the game, they can hurt you and make this game way more competitive than it should be. But you'd almost have to kind of give this game away. Like if Notre Dame plays against Florida State the way they did against Northern Illinois, they probably still win. That's just kind of how bad this football team is. I don't want that to happen. But I just want to kick that off by like, guys, we're not going to sit here and try to tell you that how good Florida State is, because they're just, Trev, we're 9 games in, bro, and we've watched the film. This is not a good football team, especially on offense.
It's not a good look when the statistics match the eye test, right? There's some teams where you look at and you know what, maybe statistically they don't look that good, but then you watch them play and it's different, right? With Florida State, it mirrors, which is not good for them. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. This is a team that's struggling right now. You know, it's hard to use the word team. They have a lot of good individual players, but they don't play well as a cohesive unit, which is frustrating. And yeah, at the start of the season, there was a lot of hype going into this game around, you know, Notre Dame plays number 10 ranked Florida State at night, you know, and then they dropped the game to Georgia Tech in week 0. And it's like, okay, well, you know, maybe Georgia Tech's going to be a really good football team this year. Who knows? And then Florida State loses to Memphis and they start stacking. They beat Cal on September 21st, and they've been on a 5-game losing streak ever since. So Florida State's reeling right now.
And that Cal win, they were losing in the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were, you know, and this is what kind of bums me out about this game. I'll be completely honest with you, Trevor, is obviously you looked at the Notre Dame schedule before the season and you're like, boy, they're going to have a chance in November to really put together a strong finish to the season. And you're going to get a top 10 win over Florida State. You're going to get a top 25 win over USC. And boy, that's going to be a great way to finish. It's going to be great for the playoff committee to see Notre Dame kind of have that kind of victory. And it became pretty obvious. I mean, really, the Georgia Tech game, you could look at and say, okay, well, it was in Ireland. It was a close game. They had a shot late. And then you watch them play against Boston College, and you're like, oh, yeah, there's something wrong. And we talked before the season about how we thought this Georgia Tech team was talented and had a lot of, you know, good players, especially on offense. And you're like, all right, it's not a game you should lose, but, you know, it's you kind of felt like then about Florida State what we felt like a couple weeks later after the Northern Illinois game, which is, you know, maybe this is the thing that kind of wakes this team up, right? Like they were feeling themselves a little bit. Hey, we're pretty good. We just kind of show up and just do our thing, and we're going to go out and beat these teams that we've beat in the past, and these teams are beneath us, like Northern Illinois, and we're going to be good. And that didn't work out for them. And it did, just like it didn't work out for Northern Illinois. The difference is Notre Dame rebounded with a fury, and Florida State allowed it to just kind of sabotage their season. And everybody's like, oh, it's because they had DJ Uiagalelei. I'm like, you guys do know that guy's like been a starting quarterback now for like 3 years and has led his team to a bowl game every single year. But all of a sudden he goes to Florida State. He leads Oregon State to an 8-win regular season. But he goes to Florida State and plays in a league he literally won a conference championship in. And all of a sudden he's a terrible quarterback. Like, that's what we're going to go with. And, oh, by the way, since DJ Uiagalelei got hurt, you know, the whole fix to their problem, they've been pretty bad on offense and arguably worse on offense since then, if we're going to be real about it. So there's so many big problems with this team, and the thing that bothers me about it, Trevor, is because not only did it as a takeaway a potential good win over Notre Dame, it takes away a little bit of something from the potential rivalry aspect of this game. Because when you look at the history of these two opponents, Florida State leads the all-time series 6-5, and they won the first game in 1981. Notre Dame, obviously, the next time they played was that huge 1993 game. They played in the next season down in Florida. Florida State won by 7. They played in an Orange Bowl at the end of the 95 season. So they played each other 93, 94, 95. Florida State won that game by 5. They played again in 02. Notre Dame trailing the series 1-3. Notre Dame went on the road, smacked them in Tallahassee. Might be a little bit before your time, Trev. 03, Florida State crushed Notre Dame, and then they didn't play again until 2011 in the Champ Sports Bowl. That was a game where Notre Dame dominated the first half of the game, and then Bob Diaco was like, hey, all that stuff we were doing in the first half that worked really well, let's not do that anymore. And Florida State came back and won. You had some quarterback issues in that game, just a disaster of a game. And then Florida State obviously beat Notre Dame in what was the second most entertaining game of the series, in my opinion, behind the 93 game in that 2014 game, which was excellent. And then Notre Dame has dominated the series since then, Trev, and winning the last, I think, 3. And they beat Notre Dame. They beat Florida State 42-13 in 2018. They beat them 42-26 in 2020. They beat them 41-38 in 2021 in a game that Notre Dame was up big. They let Florida State kind of come back in the game. They won it in overtime. And you're like, okay, this is going to be a great chance to play Florida State and get a win over a good Florida State team, because the last 3 Florida State teams Notre Dame has beat have not been very good football teams. And it almost kind of takes some of the joy out of beating them, because I was 15, when Notre Dame, I remember the Miami game, but I was 10. The Florida State game in 93, man, I absolutely remember that game. Absolutely remember that game because I was older. I could understand it more. I mean, that was the most formative game of my Notre Dame fandom as a kid because I loved Notre Dame, but that game was the one where I was like, the one, not formative, but the most memorable is the one I should probably say. And I liked that rivalry. I respected Florida State. I felt like they were kind of like the Notre Dame of the South, that independent team that would go anywhere and play anybody at any point in time. And then they joined the ACC in the series, and we didn't see a whole lot from that series anymore. You know what I mean? And they were actually, I believe, in the ACC when they played in 93. But I'm looking at in the 80s and like in 90, 91, they were an independent. They'd play Michigan. They'd go play UCLA. They'd play anybody, any place, anywhere, anytime. And so you just felt like, hey, I'd like to, they wear gold helmets, all that stuff. And you feel like it's just a nice little rivalry. It's a respectful rivalry. It's not like Miami where you hate Miami. I don't hate Florida State. I respect the Florida State, which takes some of the fun of beating them away when they are not good, which I'm sure is kind of how maybe some Florida State fans, when they beat Notre Dame, a couple times and Notre Dame wasn't that good. So that's the biggest disappointment, Trevor, is we're not good. This was supposed to be an epic matchup. And we're just going to miss out on an opportunity to get that really epic matchup. And Notre Dame gets to tie the series in a way where you're just kind of like, I don't know, feeling a little unsatisfied.
Yeah, it's disappointing because this was supposed to be one of the marquee games. I mean, I remember looking at lists of the most anticipated games of 2024, and it was towards the bottom of the top 10, top 15. But Notre Dame, Florida State was on there, and it was kind of like when we were talking about, when Notre Dame scheduled Texas and when they have Alabama scheduled, it's just good to see programs like that play each other in the middle of the season. There's a reason why Notre Dame made it a night game. And I was really excited, for this to be okay, here we go. And also just the stigma of okay, well, now Notre Dame has to prepare for another not good team. We'll see how that goes. If Florida State was good, I would have no thought around preparation, mental, physical preparation of this team. And now it's the job of the coaching staff is going to be interesting this week because now you have to get your team up for, yes, it's a night game. Yes, the recruits are coming in. It is still Florida State. But like we've said, man, this is not a good football team. And historically, those are the teams that Notre Dame has had some struggles with before in the past because it's overlooked. So I'm going to be interested to see how they do this week, but I'm with you, man. It's a disappointment. I was looking forward to this game at the start of the season, and now here we are.
And I'm looking over their schedule. It's kind of funny, Trevor, you say, it was in the bottom of the top 10, but when you consider how many huge games there were on the slate for this season, Texas, Michigan, Texas, Georgia, you know what I mean? Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon. There were so many great games this season. And, Notre Dame plays Florida State again in 2026, but I think it's 28-29 the next time Florida State comes to Notre Dame, I believe. I think it's 2029 they play at Florida State. Florida State doesn't come back to Notre Dame Stadium until 2030. It just kind of sucks, you know what I mean? Like you're expecting to see that great game. You relive 1993. I mean, that's really what I thought the hype on this game was going to be, Trevor, is sort of that reliving the 1993 game over again. And unfortunately, we're not going to get to see that. And it's a game where we're going to talk about a lot of what Notre Dame needs to do and what we need to learn from this football team. But the things at stake for Notre Dame are not so much about Florida State beating them. I mean, I think even Florida State fans would admit, like, this is, unless Notre Dame turns the ball over 5-6 times and gets picked. I mean, it'd have to be almost like Notre Dame UCLA from 2007. Do you remember that? And that was not nearly as good of a UCLA team as Notre Dame. Like, Notre Dame did nothing on offense, but like they had like a pick six and like Mo Crumb recovered a fumble and took it back inside the 5-yard line. It just was one of those games where, like, yeah, that game was not what you think it was. You know what I mean? And it almost have to be something like that, Trevor, to be completely honest with you, for them to win this game. So I just don't see that. I don't see that happening, to be honest with you. But there are some things at stake for Notre Dame in this game. And the reason we'll talk recruiting later is because I do think this is a big game for recruiting, not just with the recruits that are there, but I think there's some opportunities for Notre Dame to kind of make a statement like, hey, Southern kids, this is the place to be. You know what I mean? Like, look what we did to Florida State, and, we beat them by this amount. Miami only beat them by this amount. I mean, that's kind of what you're doing in this game if you're Notre Dame, is not that the players need to think about this, but the coaches do, and more importantly, we do, is it needs to be a more convincing game than Miami, because now you're basically kind of not stat padding, but victory comparisons like they're going to need to do with Penn State, for example. So but there's certainly some big recruiting opportunities in this game. I mean, it's not a surprise that they're bringing Jaylen Wiggins up, who's a big-time recruit, top 100 recruit from Tallahassee that's committed to Florida. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of a smart decision. You're bringing up Antoine Parham, who's from the state of Florida. So these kids are going to be very familiar with who Florida State is. But the big thing, Trev, and this is kind of where we'll dive into the show, the big thing, and really spend a lot of our time focusing, is this game is more about Notre Dame shaking off the rust out of the bye and being able to build on what they did the last 3 games after the first bye, and really what they've been doing last of 4 games, because I think you could go back to Louisville and say that's when it started. That's when this role started, where they started to they woke up offensively a little bit early, and now they've kind of built in that. So it's like, where is this team maturity-wise? Where is this team focus-wise? And all those type of things. And that's going to tell us a lot about where this football team is. And after you talk, I'm going to bring up one of the buy-sell holds and talk about, like, that's more about what this game is about than so much just beating Florida State. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that we've all wanted to see more from Notre Dame's offense is consistency, right? And what better way to show your consistency coming out of the bye week than playing a team like Florida State that is reeling right now, right? I mean, look, Notre Dame has had games in the past where they've had a great first quarter and then they've done nothing in the second and third quarter, and then they have a good fourth quarter, or they've done nothing in the first quarter and then have a really good second and third and then nothing in the fourth. So Notre Dame, like, calling a spade here, they could do nothing for 2.5 quarters and probably still beat this team by 15, 20 points. Like, that's where we're at. But Notre Dame needs to start stacking consistent quarters, because once you do get up to the playoff level, once you do start playing teams that are better than Florida State and better than Virginia, you're going to have to play complete football games. And we saw that against Navy. That was a 4-quarter, well-executed football game from start to finish on offense. And it needs to continue to build. And the reason why I'm going to be evaluating it so high is against a team like Florida State, there's no excuse to not. Right? Like there is no like, oh, well, we just didn't expect them to be like this. And it's like, okay, well, come on. You know,
well, Trevor, it goes back. You're spot on. It goes back to what Marcus Freeman had said a few weeks ago. Like the goal is not about I say the goal. The focus is not so much on winning the game or losing the game or scoring X number of points or giving up X number of points. The goal is on, we have a standard of play, and that standard's right here. And it's our job to live up to that standard every game. And then the result will take care of itself, right? That's what people don't understand is like, I don't know that he's necessarily articulating it quite the way Nick Saban did, because Nick Saban had 20 years of time to work that theory out as a defensive coordinator, and then a head coach at Toledo, and then a head coach at Michigan State, and then a head coach at LSU, to where by the time he got into he was in double-digit years as a head coach by the time he was at I think LSU for 6 years, correct, I believe. And he was, I believe, also at Michigan State for 6 years. And then he was at Toledo for a year much earlier in his career as a head football coach. I'm going to look that up and make sure that I'm correct on that. It was 5 or 6 years at LSU. I thought it was 6. But he was at Toledo for a year. He was at 5 years at LSU. So 6 years, 5 years at Michigan State. I thought it was a 6. 5 years at LSU, 1 year at Toledo. So he gets that Alabama job in 2007. He's been a head football coach for 11 years. He's been a coordinator in the NFL, right? You see, so I think Marcus Freeman has the philosophy down. Maybe he didn't articulate it in a way that, certain people wanted to hear, which is fine. I understood completely what he was saying, and I think he was spot on. It's not about that. That gets taken care of by this. And so this is our focus. And that's why I'm saying this is such an important game, because Florida State, here's the thing I'll give Florida State credit for, with the exception of really the second half against North Carolina. I really felt like this team has not quit. Like, they competed against Miami. They competed against Duke. They competed against Memphis. They competed against Cal. They competed against Clemson. Yeah, the results haven't been what they wanted, but like I remember watching them earlier. I'm like, this team is soft. This team is really soft. And then some guys kind of got hurt and banged, but like, this team has actually competed in recent games. And I give them a lot of credit for that, because they have kids on their team that have every reason in the world to just pack it in, and I'm not going to play for this. I'm going to opt out of this or that and the other thing. And they compete for the most part. There's some guys you and I talked about the other day on film. We're like, yeah, that guy's not really playing hard. But for the most part, especially on defense, they're at least competing. And I just don't think they know how to win, which is wild that a team that went 23-4 the last 2 years doesn't know how to win football games. So you look at it, and yeah, they've had a couple bad losses, Trev. I mean, obviously the loss to Miami was a blowout. The loss to Carolina was a blowout. SMU. The Clemson game was not that bad. They lost to only Memphis by 8. They only lost to Georgia Tech by 3. You only lost to Duke by a touchdown. They compete. But it's about, look, we play our game, then the result is going to take care of itself. If we're 40 points better than Florida State, we play our game, we'll be 40. If we're 20 points better and we play our game, then we'll be 20 points better. If we're 60 points better and we play our game, then we'll be 60 points better. Whatever that may be, that's the focus. And that's really where I want to see, where is this team at coming into this game, in this final four-game stretch, and it begins with Florida State, because this is the game where you have the least to play for, because next week it's senior day. So you kind of have that to play for. Army's a top 25 team. USC's a rivalry game. It's on the road. It's your last game of the year. There's a little bit more to kind of play for in some of those games. This is a game where you have nothing to play for other than just building as a team. Does this team continue what we saw them do in past games, which is, I don't care who we're playing. We're going out there to play to a standard. We're going out there to play with fire, play with passion, and play to our standard, and then the results will take care of themselves? Or do they kind of start feeling good about themselves again? Hey, we've got 10 wins or 7 wins. We're in the top 10. Go Irish. We rock. Florida State sucks. We're just going to roll the balls out and Florida State's going to quit. Which version of that Notre Dame football team shows up? I think that's for me one of most important things that I want to see out of this football team.
Yeah, I agree. I think the one thing that does make me a little nervous for this game is it's going to be very easy to overlook this Florida State team, right? Because one, you're coming out of a bye, and I believe Marcus Freeman right now is 4-0 coming off of the bye week. And you're going up against a Florida State team that is just, for all intents and purposes, they're just not a good football team right now. So I'm interested to see how the team prepares. And Marcus Freeman was very, very, very emphatic during his Monday press conference around, we need to be prepared mentally, we need to be prepared physically, because this is a game that would be easy to overlook. Brian, to your point, Senior Day is coming up. And then you have 2 back-to-back games on the road. One of them's the Shamrock Series in Yankee Stadium against an undefeated ranked Army team. And then the last one, you play your arch rival USC. So this game is easy to overlook, and that's going to be one of the things that I'm going to be evaluating on the team is, are they going to come out and sleepwalk through this game? Because you can sleepwalk through this game and still win. And that to me.
But does that get you ready for a strong 4-game stretch? And that ties into, we're going to actually bring up a buy, sell, hold question now.
Okay.
That we're going to not get into later. And it came from Domer Grizz, who said, this will be the most important 4-game stretch of Marcus Freeman's Notre Dame head coaching tenure so far. And I'm buying that, Trevor. And here's why I'm buying that. I mean, have there been more important periods in the past? Yes. They didn't turn out so well at times. This one is one because we're going to find out if this Notre Dame football team is what we think it is. Or did they just kind of beat up on some inferior teams, and that we're not going to show up thing is still in the back of them. It's still there. Yeah, okay, this time, Freeman has won 6 games in a row, where his previous high was 5 games in a row, but, they're slightly better, and then they're going to just kind of take that step back, whether it's losing a game or just playing so poorly that you just don't enjoy the win, because that's the thing that I worry about as you come out of this game. But this game also kicks off this last 4-game stretch, which is important. And I feel as if you sleepwalk through this game, my fear is that it gets you into a funk in this last 4-game stretch. I also feel the flip side is true. If you come out of this game focused, locked in, attention to detail, understanding what's in front of you as a football team, then you have a much better shot, in my opinion, of that just being something you just continue to roll. And you can't allow the bye and this game to take away the momentum that this football team had. And that's where I want to – that's why I say this is an important stretch, and this game is important because it's the kickoff to that. More so than Florida State or the quality opponent. It's more so this game's going to tell us if you've truly turned a corner from a leadership standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, from a focus standpoint, from a attention to detail standpoint, where you're not that team that was just kind of, hey, here you go, you look great, you look great, boom, what the heck was that? You look great, you look great, what the heck was that? Are you truly past that? Because I'm sitting there in the chat or in the message board the other day, Trevor, and somebody makes this point, and we got this one guy on the board who's just like super negative. And he said something, and I'm like, dude, if you would just not say things in such a ridiculously negative way, you're actually making a point that we need to be able to address and learn about this Notre Dame football team. Or like, you just look at every game this way, but it's kind of like, but your point isn't wrong, which is, do we know for sure that the Notre Dame team from Stanford 2012, Marshall 2012, Louisville 2023, Clemson 2023, Northern Illinois of September, is that truly dead? Have they buried it? Or is it still kind of lurking back there waiting to come out? And I don't know that a 6-game win streak against a solid group of opponents, but not an elite group of opponents, answers that question for us. And this is the type of game that can springboard you to where you do go on that run. Because I think if Notre Dame wins their last 4 and you say, listen, they won 10 in a row, that's a different animal then win 3 or 4, look great, and then boom. And we can start to kind of put behind us that this team doesn't show up against certain games. That's what I think. And I think this game is super important for that, because I believe how – I could be wrong, but I believe how they start this 4-game stretch is going to have a big impact on how the 4-game stretch goes. Doesn't mean that it means they're going to lose or lose a game or two or win all their games. It's just more about how they're going to play. They go 4-0 down the stretch and not look good doing it, and then not climb in the rankings or maybe even fall back in the rankings, right? Like that matters. And I think this game is going to tell us a lot about that, Trevor.
Yeah, it's a chance for Notre Dame's team to get started on the right foot in this final stretch of 4 games. I think back to the Clemson game last year in 2023. That was Marcus Freeman's last time where he was playing an opponent where preseason this was supposed to be some, crazy game. It's at Clemson, and then Clemson ends up not being the team that people thought they were. They were down 8 starters, and then Notre Dame goes out and plays one of the worst games that they had played all season. So now I will say the Clemson 2023 team is better than the Florida State 2024 team by a mile.
Your point stands, though, Trevor. So maybe this time they don't lose by a touchdown. They win by a touchdown or 10, but you have the same feeling coming out of it like, what the heck was that? This team didn't even want to be here today. Mm-hmm. They didn't even want to be here today. How does that happen on a Saturday night in South Bend? When you're a top 10 team in the country and you're playing for something. And
we talk all the time about Notre Dame being a rhythm team, a rhythm offense specifically. How is it going to be from the bye week, right? How is it going to be? You were rolling against Navy, and it was just upticking and upticking and upticking. And now you have your second bye within 3 weeks. Is that going to be the thing that says, you know what? Well, now we might have tried to implement too much during the bye, or we were in a really good rhythm, but now, it's kind of haltered a little bit.
Or the attitude changed.
Right.
That's the big one.
So
that's the big one for me.
It's going to be a big game. Like it's going to be a game where I'm looking a lot at body language, and I'm looking at how the game is called, and I'm looking at the confidence of some of the players on the sideline, because that to me is going to be an indication of the mindset that they're going to take into this final stretch of these regular season games before they get into the playoffs. Now that the playoff rankings have came out, is their mindset, we just got to win, and then it's time to focus in on the playoffs? No, you guys are still far from a complete a finished product, and there's still things that need refined before you get to the playoffs, and that is going to be what I hope this team's mentality is going into these final 4 games, and it starts with Florida State.
So, Trev, let's talk. That'll kind of wrap up sort of the first portion, which is, what does this team have to play for? What is your motivation here? What is your why? And your why is because we're Notre Dame, and because we have a standard we have to live up to, and because we love playing the game of football, right? There's also a level of, this is exactly the kind of game you have to dominate. You have to dominate, because if you don't dominate it, it says it fair or not, you can't have a letdown game in the final 4-game stretch if you want to rise up in the polls. You're trying to chase Tennessee, you're trying to chase Penn State, you're trying to chase Indiana, you're trying to chase some of these teams. Indiana's sitting there at 11-1 at the end of the year, and you're sitting there 11-1 at the end of the year, and they're like, yeah, we beat better teams than you did, Indiana. Okay, sure, but we dominated everybody we played, and you sleptwalked through the Florida State game, the Virginia game. You barely beat Army. Come on, guys. Hey, you're trying to leap Penn State. You've risen up in the rankings, and Penn State's still ahead of you, and they've got no good wins. You've got better wins, but they're like, hey, listen, we went to overtime with USC. You went to overtime with USC. What's the reason to jump you above us if we haven't already done so? Right. So how they finish is going to have a big impact on where they're seated. And, people and Marcus Freeman can't talk about this, and he shouldn't talk about this, because his focus needs to be on, hey, let's get this team locked in, on the standard. Right. I mean, and focus on playing to the best of our ability. That will take care of the stuff that we know maybe as coaches is true, which is we got to blow this team out and look really good doing it. And that's the thing, is if you're Marcus Freeman, you have to know that the eye test matters, but you can't preach that to your players. They can't care about that. They've got to care about doing their job. And that's one of the little mental, the mental buildup aspects of what separates great coaches from good coaches. And that's something that Lou Holtz was great about, so that's really what Notre Dame is playing for. We're going to get to part 2 here in a second, folks, and we're going to kind of talk about the one matchup that I do think we can learn the most from against Florida State is the offense against the Notre Dame defense, or against Florida State defense. So we'll get into that next. But before we do, folks, do us a favor, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review. And if you have not done so, do us a solid and go to boards.irishbreakdown.com and sign up for our message board. It is a Notre Dame board, but you don't necessarily have to be a Notre Dame fan to be on there. You can come on there and talk about all types of topics. We actually do have some fans from other teams on there, so you're welcome to check that out at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So, Trev, when we look at this matchup, everything we said about Florida State not being good is true, and a lot of that has to do with their offense. And this is one of the worst offenses I've ever seen. It really is. And we've seen some Notre Dame football teams have some bad offenses. And I was talking about one earlier, that 07 team. That was a bad football team. That was not a very good football team. But when you look at that Notre Dame team in 2007, they scored 16.4 points per game. This Florida State team is scoring 14.4 points per game. They scored 21 points in the opener. In the 8 games since their opener, they have yet to score not 21 points, not 20 points. They have yet to get to 17 in a game. They have scored 13, 12, 14, 16, 13, 16, 14, and 11 points. Here's an even crazier stat, and I don't know that I've ever seen anything like this. Florida State on the season, and I know that you know this answer, Trevor, because you've studied this team. They have yet to get to 300 yards of offense in a game. Like the closest they got the first 2 games, they got to 291, 293. They got to 291 against Duke. Had a couple big plays that helped that out. They've been at 291, 293, 238, 284, 285, 250, 291, 248. And last week against Florida State, they had 201. They've only had over 100 rushing yards. Again, keep in mind, they're 1-8. So they've played 9 games. They've only rushed for over 100 yards 3 times. They've only rushed for over 150 yards once. That's it. They've only been over 5 yards a play. As a matter of fact, they've only been above 4.8 yards per play twice all season. That was at 5.02 and 5.05 in their first 2 games of the season. I have never seen a team have this big of a drop-off as a team, but even more so on a side of the ball as what this Florida State team has done in just 1 year. I'd like to say I saw some warning signs, and I knew their offense wasn't going to be as good as it was last year. I did not see this coming. It is a really bad unit.
I think the most shocking stat to me, because when you're talking about Florida State's offense, you kind of look for like what is good. And right now they're converting in the red zone at like an 87.5% clip. And then you look at that stat with a little bit of context. Florida State has played 9 football games, 36 quarters of football. They have made it to the red zone 16 times. That, I think, is one of the craziest stats that I've seen. Through 36 quarters of football, you get inside of the opponent's 20 16 times. So I think that's one that is just, I mean, you want to talk about one reason why the team is struggling. I mean, they just can't move the ball.
Well, sometimes, Trevor, red zone trips can be a little bit misleading because you can be like, hey, listen, we can't get into the red zone when we have all these plays of, 40, 50 yards per play. Not the case with Florida State. They rank 128th in the country in most plays of 4 yards or more, 40 yards or more. They rank 121st in the country in plays of 30 yards or more. They rank 117th in the country in most plays of 20 yards or more. That is not good. It's not good. The highest ranking they have is actually plays of 50 yards or more. They rank 98th because they have 3. And they've only got 1 play of 60 yards or more on the season. We talk about how Notre Dame's offense is not been as good as you hoped it would be, and it has to be better, and it wasn't explosive. Notre Dame ranks 66th in plays of 30 yards or more. Florida State ranks 29th, and Florida State's played one more game than 121st with 20, and they've played one more game than Notre Dame. It's bad. What I also think it has done is it has made the defense look worse than I think the defense actually is. Because if you look at the Florida State defense, their numbers tell a really sad story. They have 20. They're giving up 27.3 points per game on the season, which is obviously not a good number. It really isn't, Trevor. It's let's be honest, it's a bad number, especially for a team that has the kind of talent that this Florida State team has on it on defense and still has on it to this day. I personally believe that some of those numbers are a little bit misleading. And the reason I think they're misleading, Trevor, is because there's some bad things about this defense, but I think it's just they're on the field so much because of how bad their offense is. I mean, like you said, they can't move the ball. They have yet to get to 300 yards in a game. Let me see what their plays are, because I remember looking at a couple weeks ago and it was really bad. They rank 103rd in the country in plays. That just total plays run. They rank 130th in the country in yards per play, which you talked about in your opponent preview article. And when that's the case, guess what? Your defense is going to be on the field quite a lot. Their defense ranks 114th in plays, and on defense it's the opposite. You want to be high because it means fewer plays. So if you're 114th in plays, that means you're on the field a lot. And I think they've just worn down. They don't have great depth, but this is actually the side of the ball that does, on film, actually make me say, if Notre Dame doesn't bring it, this is what could make the game closer. I just don't think Florida State has any chance of scoring enough to make this a game where you actually feel like they might lose. Anything can happen, right? Anything can happen in college football, but we're just being honest. I'm not going to sit here and throw a million caveats all week about, there's always this could happen. Y'all know all that already. But this matchup, however, Trevor, does concern me a little bit for two reasons. One, and we've said it for weeks, this is where they have the most NFL talent on their roster. Patrick Payton, Marvin Jones, even with the injuries, DJ Lundy's out and guys like that are out. But Shaheem Brown, Patrick Payton, Marvin Jones, Josh Farmer, Darrell Jackson, Ventrell Cypress. I mean, those are talented football players. Now, Cypress is a little banged up. He came out early in the North Carolina game. I think he got hurt against Duke and then tried to go against Carolina, got banged up, came out early. I would imagine he's going to try to play in this game. But there's some legit good talent on this football team. Earl Little was a former top recruit, 5-star recruit. He's part of the safety rotation. There's some talent here to where if you play like you have at times this season on offense, where you're slow, you're stagnant, there's no creativity, there's no aggressiveness. Those are aspects where you look at and say, you could have some trouble in this game. One area where Notre Dame has had trouble in the last couple of years is really tall corners, right? The Thomas kid on the other side, he's tall and he's pretty fast. He's a burner, but he's got good speed. That's my concern is you come out, you're stagnant, you're slow, you're not focused, you're not playing hard up front. You're thinking they're just going to roll over and die. This is the side of the ball that I look at mostly and say, they haven't quit yet. Maybe the North Carolina game was their breaking point, but they haven't quit yet. And if they come ready to play and Notre Dame doesn't, again, I'm not saying that Notre Dame's going to lose, but that's the side of the ball that would factor in forcing turnovers to give them short fields, forcing early punts, things along those lines. Those are all factors that make me a little bit concerned about what this Florida State football team could be. And not could be, but what this Florida State football team could do in order to make this game a little bit more interesting than it should be.
The individual matchups between Notre Dame's offense and Florida State's defense, I think, is going to bode well for Notre Dame down the road. When you look at this matchup in this game from like a 10,000-foot view, playing Florida State's team is not going to do anything for Notre Dame. But individually, they have a very disruptive defensive line. They rank 31st in the country in tackles for a loss. They rank 23rd in the country in sacks, and it's all coming by way of their defensive line. They rotate a lot of guys in. On defense, tackles for a loss, their first 4 team leaders in tackles for a loss are all defensive linemen. Patrick Payton has 8 tackles for a loss on the season. Josh Farmer has 6.5. Daniel Lyons, who's a rotational guy, has 4.5. Marvin Jones Jr. has 4.5. And then for sacks, Patrick Payton leads the team with 4. Daryl Jackson's a D lineman. I mean, their 5 top sack leaders as a team are all on the defensive line. So there are matchups individually with this game that's going to bode well for experience for Notre Dame down the road, especially when you factor in their 2 defensive ends are very long, they're athletic, and Notre Dame has 2 young offensive tackles, right? So it's going to be interesting as a whole to see how the offensive line plays. And then to your point about Florida State's cornerback play, Notre Dame's wide receivers are starting to come on the last couple games, but Azare Thomas, I think I'm pronouncing that name right. But that Thomas kid is long, man. I mean, he's 6'2", 198. That's a good size for a corner. And I don't know if Stanford or Georgia Tech or Navy had a corner with that type of length and ability. So it's going to be interesting. Like I said, if I'm a Notre Dame fan and I'm sitting down watching the game, and it's like I need to know what I can look at to evaluate where this team is at. You look at those individual matchups because there's a chance that Notre Dame could run the ball 45 times on Saturday and still win by 30 points, right? Like that's not going to tell us anything new about the team. Offensive line, it would bode well for them, but Florida State's defensive line is not great against the run. They're really disruptive against the pass, but not great against the run. So those would be the individual matchups that I would pay attention to, because that's going to start giving an indicator for when they do go and play, a USC defense with a good amount of athletes on it, despite what their overall record says. And when you get into the postseason, they can say, well, I mean, Anthony Knapp and Emil Wagner held their own against, Patrick Payton and Marvin Jones Jr., which, I think would bode well for them down the road.
In pass pro, I completely agree with you. Same thing with Billy Schrouth and Rocco Spindler going against Josh Farmer and Daryl Jackson up the middle. When those 2 guys want to play, they can play. I think was it the Carolina game or was it the Miami game? I was watching one of those games this weekend, like getting caught up on Florida State. There was like 2 out of 3 plays. Daryl Jackson, I think it was Daryl Jackson. It might have been Farmer, but I think it was number 6 because Farmer's 5, Jackson 6. So, and they're both huge. So sometimes, when you're watching film from far away, it can be like, I'm not sure which guy that was. Just twice in a row, just destroyed a guard from North Carolina and just made a big play in the backfield. And you're just like, dude. And then he kind of just disappears for the next 2-3 quarters, and you're just like, man, like, where'd that go? Like what happened there? And that's the thing is, if one of those guys gets into an early rhythm and kind of gets some excitement and makes a couple big plays early, then you start seeing more of that. And one thing we've learned from this Florida State team, and we'll talk a lot more about this tomorrow when we do our key number 1 to victory, because we all know what that's going to be. The longer this defense feels like they're in a game, the better they play. When you jump on them quick, boom, they fade. And they kind of quit, and it starts up front. I mean, that's the thing is that's the part of the defense that when they're good, it's because they're good. When they're not good, it's because that group just decides they don't want to play anymore. And that's been one of the most. That is the defensive line is probably the biggest. If you want to point to one thing and say that's why Florida State's not good this year, it's that right there, right? They're a microcosm of this team. When they want to play, they actually look okay. They just don't want to play very often. And the concern I have about a game like this is, number 1, you're going against Notre Dame, O-line you're trying to go to the NFL. This is kind of that game where it's like, hey, let me put some really good tape on there for NFL teams. And you go out there and just have that big 3-sack game and just tear Notre Dame up, and you look like gangbusters in pass pro. Where I think this game could come down to is the more Anthony Knapp and Emil Wagner can pop these guys off the ball in the run game, the more they're going to kind of no-moss it in the pass game, in my opinion. And that's really, but again, that goes back to the earlier point, Trevor, is does Notre Dame understand that as players? I know Mike Denbrock understands that. I know Al Golden understands that. I know Joe Rudolph understands that. I know that Dylan McCullough understands that. I know that Al Washington understands that. Mike Mickens, Mike Brown, Gino, all of them. Max Bullock, they all understand it. Does the leadership of the team understand that? Do the players understand that, hey, fellas, like, this is a dangerous team if we let them hang around, so we can't do that. We got to come out. We have to live up to our standard. We have to play a certain way, and we have to set the tone and take it to them. And not some of this, like, I don't want to see, like, we haven't seen this version of Marcus Freeman in a while. You know, let's methodically move the ball down the field on Miami of Ohio. You know, let's not do anything crazy against Northern Illinois, right? Remember that? We haven't seen that, Mark. This is the fake it, go for fakes on your own. This is we've seen. I like the version of Marcus Freeman that when he's playing at Texas A&M and you got it on 4th down at your own like 32 and you go for it in the second half. That's the Marcus Freeman I like. That Marcus Freeman that says, hey, I don't care if it's 24-7 and you think this game is over. You're trying to come after the punt. We're faking it. Your defense is put 9 in the box. We're throwing it over your head. Right? Like, that's the Marcus Freeman I hope that this team has this week, because I think they'll feed off of that and really have that intensity of saying, we're going to take it to this football team. Because that's the thing is, it's either going to be a super sloppy win or a major rout. Because if they start slow and Notre Dame doesn't have intensity, Florida State will feel like, hey, maybe we have a shot, and that's how you win 21-6. Where it's like, again, you're not going to lose. Their offense is terrible. The Notre Dame defense isn't going to have that mentality. I'm still worried about the offense. They've grown a ton. They've got a lot better. But that's the side of the ball I'm worried about, just kind of, are you going to show up today? Right? That's that tone setter that I need to see Notre Dame have. Because if they do that, then I think this D-line gets neutralized. Because what this D-line, which is insane to me, that this D-line with Darrell Jackson and Josh Farmer can get run on like they do. But to your point, Trevor, this is a defense that has allowed over 200 rushing yards in 4 of their last 5 games, and has allowed 5 of their 9 opponents to go for over 200 yards. Here's the even crazier part: 6 of their 9 opponents have gone for 190 yards or more. The other 3 have gone for 65, 107, and 110. They're boom or bust. That's what they are. They're boom or bust, and a lot of it is in how does it start. And so that's why Notre Dame's got to come out and just right away, boom, get after it. And that matchup is the one. And that's why I think you nailed it, Trevor. This is the one matchup where with Anthony Knapp and Emil Wagner, it say, hey, listen, I know Florida State stinks. And I hate saying that. I'm not trying to talk trash about Florida State. I have a great deal of respect for Florida State, but guys, they're 1-8. They've scored over 20 points once all year. That's abysmal. Abysmal. As bad as Notre Dame was in 2017, by the time they got to game 9, they had scored over 20 points once. No, I'm sorry, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They'd scored over 20 points or more twice. As bad as they were that season, even that team had scored over 20 points twice. Like, this is abysmal. I'm sorry. It just is. And it sucks that it is, because I really wanted this to be a big game, but it is. But if you look at it from a micro standpoint, there are a couple individual matchups that if Notre Dame can win that matchup, that bodes well for the finish for that particular player. Knapp and Emil Wagner against their defensive ends is one, Marvin Jones and Patrick Payton. They also have the Oregon State kid that Notre Dame faced last year, who's also one of their rotation guys. He hasn't done a whole lot for them this year. And then the other one is the matchup against the corners. And so those two matchups, if Notre Dame can thrive in those matchups, that says, okay, this offense, not so much if they just go out there and run for 275 yards and just blow this team off that's good. You learn a lot, but I really want to see this team have some balance and see if they can protect the quarterback against those guys. And if they do, that's going to tell me, okay, this line has solidified. They're good to go. You know what I mean, Trev? And so that's an aspect of this matchup that I think is really interesting, intriguing, and goes beyond just this game for Notre Dame.
It's one of those things where you kind of have to look at the game within the game, right? Because Notre Dame absolutely could line up in 22 personnel and run it 50 times and win 38-3, right? Like but it's not going to tell us anything, right? Like that's not going to tell us now they can compete with Texas, guys. Now they can go beat Ohio State. Now they can go beat Oregon. Like that's just, you dominated a really bad football team in the only thing that you are confident in doing week in and week out. What I want to see, to your point, is really let the offense open up. Like Notre Dame has faced some bad pass defenses over this stretch, and they've taken advantage of it somewhat. Now, I'm not asking for Riley Leonard to go out and have 45 passing attempts on Saturday, right? But consistently, not even keep the foot on the gas, just run your offense. Run the offense that you ran the last 3 games against Stanford, Georgia Tech, and Navy, right? So I'm excited to see what that's going to be. But again, one of the biggest evaluation tools for me is going to be seeing how these young tackles do against these defensive ends. Because if they're allowing pressure after pressure and Riley Leonard is having to scramble and getting a guy forklifted back into his lap on quick game, yeah, somebody might be like, are we really going to criticize the offensive line after Notre Dame won by what they did? Yes, we are, because that was happening against a 1-8 team with good talent at those positions. But this is an opportunity for the young tackles at Notre Dame to take that next step and really start performing well, because it's going to bode well for them the rest of the season. And then same thing with the wide receivers. Jordan Faison's finally back healthy. Bo Collins is right now their solidified number 1. Jaden Greathouse is still waiting for his breakout game, right? Get him matched up on a safety, see what happens there. So there's a lot of things that I want to see out of them. So hopefully this is going to be the week where they take advantage of it, man.
Going to be interesting. And I'm also looking to see, are there any potential breakouts that emerge down the stretch, right? We talked a lot earlier last week about, is Mitchell Evans finish well, right? Does Jaden Greathouse, Chris Mitchell, Jordan Faison, do one of those guys really step up and finish well? Does the offensive line build on what they did sort of the last game and a half, or at least especially this last game? Those are all things that you look at, Trev, and say, boy, I want to see that from this team. And there's enough talent, individual talent. Like Florida State's defense as a whole is not that good, but there's some individual matchups that are going to be intriguing to me, to say, okay, that makes me feel like this team is continuing to trend in the right direction. And they came out of this bye week rested and focused and ready to play Notre Dame football last 4 games, regardless of what, because like you said, there's a scenario in which Notre Dame wins this game 40-7, where you're just like, good win, but yeah, let's go out and play better against Virginia. It's not that we're going to crush them for it, because a 40-7 win is a 47 win over Florida State. It's still a 47 win over Florida State. But it's like, yeah, it's a good win. They're pretty bad. You did some things. You just kind of out-athleted shook them, and it's good. You shook some rust off, and, let's get better for Virginia. I'm good with it, but I'm not like, oh, my gosh, you beat Florida State 40-7. You know what I mean? But there's also a case where you could win by that same exact score, and you're just like, this team's going to be a problem for people next for the rest of the year. You know what I mean? And that's kind of where you're looking at for it, Trevor. Because, you look at this Florida State team, as bad as they are, they've lost by 3, 15, 8, 26, 16, 7, 22, and 24. How long have I been muted?
Oh, no, you've been good.
Okay, so I muted myself.
Ooh, now it's kind of freaking out.
It started muting itself.
Huh.
Yeah, it was wild. Because I'm sitting there talking, I look down, like, it's muted, but Trevor's not giving you. It looked like you were listening, but then I looked down and the thing showed that it was muted. If Notre Dame beats Florida State the way they have been beating everybody else by an average of over 30 points, they will have done something that nobody else has done to Florida State, which is beat them by over 30 points. Their biggest margin of defeat this season is 26 points. Right. And that was at SMU, number 13 team in the country. They lost by 16 to a Clemson team who's ranked in the top 25. They lost by 22 to a Miami team that's ranked in the top 5. That's the final piece of this, Trevor, is if you dominate them. And I think that Miami game, I believe, was like 23-7 in the fourth quarter. Let me look that up real quick, Trevor, because they blew them out, and it was never competitive, but it wasn't a real wow, Miami looked so great in that game. They scored 13 points in the fourth quarter. Miami did, and so let's see here. Let's get to that box score. Yeah, so it was 23-7 going into the fourth quarter. It was only 17-7 at halftime. And then they scored a touchdown with 4 minutes left and another touchdown with 2 minutes left to really pile it on. And then Florida State got one back. So it was about a 20 to 22 point win in by margin, and also kind of how it played out. Like it was never a game Florida State was in, but it wasn't a game where Miami just dominated them the way that Notre Dame dominated Navy. So if you're Notre Dame and you're trying to jockey for position and you want to show the committee, hey, this is why you're undervaluing us, this is why you guys need to move past the Northern Illinois game, is because we've played, 7 games now since then, and we're crushing people. Okay, you want to have us 10? Look at what Miami did against this team a couple weeks ago. Look what we just did to them. You know what I mean? We had them down by 22 at halftime. You know what I mean? We had, and we did this. That you may not think that matters, but it does. It does to the committee. It especially for Notre Dame, because one thing we learned about there's 2 things we learned about the playoff committee. Number one, they don't disrespect the ACC the way that the media does. That's why there's 5 ACC teams in the top 25, which is more than the Big Ten has and more than the Big 12 has. However, a big chunk of those teams that are in the top 25 are in the bottom part of the top 25. So while they think it's a quality league, they don't view it like they do the Big Ten, the top level of the Big Ten, and they don't view it like they do the SEC. So when you play one of these teams, you got to destroy them. And that's really where we're at in this game, Trevor. And so when you talk about what's at stake, that's sort of that final piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to go ahead.
No, I was going to absolutely. I mean, you brought up a good point around, there's 2 ways that this outcome could be if the final score is 40-7. And the way that I look at that is almost kind of like through the same lens, but a different point of view. On one hand, you could say, yes, the final score is 40-7, but like Notre Dame capped it off. Like they called off the dogs and it was 40-7. Or you say, yes, it was 40-7 because Notre Dame just ran it the entire game.
And
so
scored, or scored 21 in the fourth quarter. And
right.
It was a sloppy game. They just, Florida State kind of quit. Yeah, kind of thing.
Right. Which I think is so fascinating about this game, because there's a lot of people that look at it macro view and they'll just look at the final score. And us here at Irish Breakdown, we're here to look in between the lines, baby. We're here to kind of dissect the game within the game, which is what I love that we do.
So, Trev, we're going to get into here the recruiting section here in a second. But before we do, y'all know the drill. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review, and make sure you're checking out all of our free content at irishbreakdown.com. Trevor has a preview of the Notre Dame men's basketball front court and back court. They kick off their season tonight. You'll have a post-game breakdown of that game and a notebook tomorrow, so that'll be fun to see. And then moving forward after, so like today we just put like a couple of season preview articles up. Moving forward, we'll actually have game previews up every game of the teams that Notre Dame plays, but we wanted to kind of today sort of have it instead of a game preview against a team that's not that great. We'll preview the entire Notre Dame team first, and then we'll do the game previews moving forward. So you definitely want to check that out. And you can find that at irishbreakdown.com. And, of course, if you want to be part of our premium community, which Trevor will put those articles up on that board as well, you can sign up for our premium community at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So, Trevor, let's have a little bit of a recruiting conversation, because this is going to be a big weekend for Notre Dame from a recruiting standpoint. Now, I understand why Notre Dame made Florida State a big game, because at the beginning of the season, you kind of looked at it and you're thinking that's going to be a pretty big game. It hasn't panned out that way from the standpoint of the opponent is going to be really strong, but it is still a very big recruiting weekend, because I don't care what their record is. You beat Notre Dame, you beat Notre Dame, right? Like, I don't care what your record is. I mean, there's teams that beat Notre Dame in 07 and 16 that are still looking back and say, hey, we beat Notre Dame, no matter how bad they were. Florida State's the same exact way. It's still Florida State. Yes, I know they're down, but when you're talking about 16, 17, 18-year-old kids who are looking at Florida State or other schools that can play them and you're like, wow, like look what Notre Dame did, right? Look how crazy the crowd was. Look how wild the crowd was, even though it was a 1-8 football team. It's still a big recruiting weekend for Notre Dame, and they're going to have some very, very talented players on campus this weekend, Trevor. And it's going to be a big weekend from the standpoint of really finishing strong with the 2025 class, and then continuing to get a leg up on some 2026 kids. But the 2025 finish is really the key. Because right now, I actually really like Notre Dame's 2025 class. I know it gets a lot of it's been dinged a lot from national rankings, have it outside the top 10. I don't necessarily agree with that. They haven't had a lot of good momentum in the last several months. You lost Deuce Knight. Daniel Anderson's out of the class. You've picked up a couple kids here and there, but they're not guys that necessarily have fans excited. You made a run at Jalen Cooper, didn't get him. You made a run at another running back that I know of. I don't know if they necessarily pushed for him, but I know they made a run at him. You just haven't been able to close the way that you want to close so far. They have an opportunity now in this last couple months here, actually last month before signing day, to close strong, not just from a momentum standpoint, but some really good players. You got Blake Hebert recently. That was big. You got Scrap Richardson, Antavius Richardson recently. That was a big one. He'll be on campus this weekend, along with all the receiver commitments, actually, in the 23 or 25 and 26 classes. Elijah Burris, Antavius Richardson, Jerome Bettis Jr., and Dylan Faison will all be on campus this weekend. And so Notre Dame doesn't have a lot of big needs, but they have very targeted needs that are going to tell us if this is a borderline top 10 class, which right now it is, or is this class finished back closer to the top 5, which is what it was for much of the cycle. And how things go this weekend is going to go a long way towards that, Trevor. And so just a real quick rundown of who's going to be on campus this weekend, and then we'll dive into some of the specifics. You have a lot of commits on campus this weekend. I mentioned the 4 receivers. Noah Grubbs is also going to be on campus this weekend, which means both 26 commits are going to be on campus. Justin Thurman's going to be on campus. Owen Strebigan and Cam Herron, our 2 offensive linemen, are going to be on campus this weekend. Christopher Burgess is expected to be on campus this weekend, along with Dom Hulak and Gordy Solstad. Jadon Blair and Brandon Logan are supposed to be on campus this weekend, and Dallas Golden and Mark Zachary are also supposed to be on campus this weekend. So you'll have tons of recruits there, or commits there, which is good, because people ask, how do you show all these recruits a good time and show love and attention when you've got a game to coach? And I'm like, number one, that's what Chad Bowden and his staff get paid for. And number 2, this is why you bring a lot of your commits on campus. So, Antoine Parham can spend time with the Notre Dame coaches, but he can also spend time with Elijah Burris and Scrap Richardson and Jerome Bettis and Dallas Golden, a fellow Florida guy, and players like that. So that's part of it. But you've got some important, it's good to have them, because you do have 7 2025 players on campus this weekend, and they're all very important recruits for Notre Dame. So we're going to go through and we're going to break down the official visitors real quick, then the unofficial visitors, and I'll kind of give you a little bit of a glimpse of where things are right now. We'll go kind of by position, and I want to start off with Nolan James, running back from New Jersey, high school teammate of Elijah Burris. Kid I really like. He's over 3,000 yards in his career rushing. He's got over 1,000 career receiving yards in his. Watch him play this year. He plays with really good football teams. There's a couple people on our board that saw him play live, and they're like, that guy is a dude. I remember when I was told that there was a couple running backs Notre Dame was going after, but they didn't want the names out there yet, so they wouldn't give me the name. And so I started doing a little bit of digging, and I texted Nick Kramer, and I think I might have texted you. And I was like, hey, have you seen this kid before? Because a buddy of mine had told me about him. He said, hey, I think you might like this guy that's committed to BC. And I was all right, cool, send me his way. And so I'm watching Nolan James film, and I was like, yep, that's my kind of running back. Just that slasher, one cut and go, elusive, not a burner, but a really quick, shifty guy, strong runner, and impactful against a really good level of football. And so I saw him, and I was like, boy, I really hope that this is one of those kids. And so I sent off a couple text messages about him. Well, lo and behold, he was one of those players. And I know that this Notre Dame staff is very high on Nolan James. And this is a big visit for both parties in this recruitment, because Nolan is committed to Boston College. I think he's comfortable with his commitment there, but Notre Dame's just Notre Dame. And I remember when we reached out to him before we knew that Notre Dame was on him, and I think maybe even before Notre Dame really started making a move for him. And he was like, yeah, if Notre Dame was interested, I'd be very interested in Notre Dame. This is even, I think, right before or right when they first started looking into him. And so there's obviously some interest there from Notre Dame, and the kid has interest in them. They have interest in him. Can they convince him that this is the place to be? That's what this weekend's going to be about. Can they convince him that, hey, yes, we didn't get on you early. Here's why. Here's kind of where we're at. Here's why we maybe got on you later than maybe otherwise we would have liked to have gotten on you. And it doesn't mean we don't like you as a player. It doesn't mean we don't think you're an outstanding talent. It doesn't mean any of those things. It's just the way the process played out, the way the board played out. So I need to. That's what something Notre Dame's going to have to do with Nolan James is kind of let him know, hey man, the timing of when we get on you doesn't matter. What matters is you can ball and we love you. And the feedback I've gotten from my sources at Notre Dame, there are some people that absolutely love this kid, have liked him for a long time, but they already had two backs, and that's kind of where it was. And they weren't prepared to move on from Daniel Anderson yet. And that's kind of where they are. So that's one guy, Trevor, that's going to be on campus this weekend. I know you've had a chance to watch Nolan James a little bit, but he's not ranked real high. I get all that. And he's not someone that I'd be like, oh, they're missing the boat. He should be a top 50 recruit like Jeremiah Love. He's not that either. This is just a good football player. This is just that running back that goes to BC that's a 3-star that nobody's ever heard of. And then as a sophomore, junior year, like, who the heck's this kid rushing for 100 yards a game at BC? I've never even heard of this kid from Jersey. Like, where did they get him from? That's who Nolan James is. And fortunately, Notre Dame staff is getting in on him, and they're maybe trying to hope that he's doing that at Notre Dame instead of Boston College here down the road. But this is a kid whose film I like a ton.
Yeah, I'm with you. He's somebody that's not going to take the top off of a defense, right? Like, he's not a Jeremiah Love burner guy. He's just you said it best, man. He's just a really good football player. He's a smart runner for somebody that's in high school too. He has really good vision for somebody like that, because typically in high school, when you see good athletes, they do things where everything's bouncing to the outside and they just try to out-athlete everybody. And he's somebody that's, he's willing to lower his shoulder and cut back into the teeth of the defense just to get the extra yards. So he's a good football player, man.
He's got the perfect build for it too, Trevor. He's one of those really uniquely built guys that has a very low, his hips are really low. He's got a really short lower body, which can make him kind of hard to tackle. Because if you're trying to go for a running back's legs, his legs are a little bit lower than others. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, I mean,
he's a very unique player. There's no question about it. Very strong athlete. And yeah, he's not a burner, but as we've seen with guys like Kyron Williams, with guys like Tony Jones, with guys like Logan Diggs, Audric Estime, you don't have to be a burner. When you get to the second level, you're going to go. And his ability to take contact, stay upright, keep working, his balance from the standpoint of being able to make cuts and quickly accelerate as soon as his feet hit the ground, whether it's coming off of being hit, whether it's making a move. I love his feet. He's got great balance. And as I said, I think as a sophomore, he played running back and receiver. He did both, and he had over 500 receiving yards as a sophomore. So this is a kid that can do things now he's not someone who's going to line up at receiver and be a full-time receiver, but he's a guy that can do a lot of different things as a pass catcher in this Notre Dame offense. And I think that's something that Notre Dame finds attractive as well for this young man. So this is an official visit for Nolan James, and it's a big visit for Notre Dame. If they can impress him and really make that sales pitch of, yes, the timing may look this way, but trust me, you're our guy. And I believe that to be true from the people I've talked to. From the moment we started talking about Nolan James, it's like this guy can flat out play. We love this kid. And so now they just got to convince him of that. There's another guy on campus who's probably the most, I don't say divisive. That's not the word I mean. Say maybe controversial prospect on campus this weekend from a standpoint of the stargazers are not going to love this kid. And that's Antoine Parham from Monarch High School in Coconut Creek, Florida. 6'4", 205, 3-star recruit, committed to Tulane. Notre Dame, I believe, is his only Power 4 offer. He's got some Group of 5 offers, but it's his only one. And I've had people say, you hear it all. Well, look at his stars, look at his offer list. How can you tell me that no one else is looking at him? I don't know why other people aren't looking at him. I don't. I can only tell you what I see on film and what I know about this kid. So Antoine moved to Monarch this year from Georgia. He played at a very, very small area in Georgia that just is not, it's under-recruited. And I don't say under-recruited like it should be recruited more. It's lightly recruited. It's just not a place where you see a lot of these type of players. And he was a good prospect as a junior. He is a much better prospect as a senior. He's really developed his body has developed. You watch him play as a junior, Trevor, and I see a smooth kid, and he's got good enough speed to make some big plays, but he's not a burner. He's pretty fluid. He's decent after the catch. Played a lot of corner as a junior in high school. This is in, I think it's Effington County in Georgia. Transfers to Monarch, and he's primarily wide receiver, and he's playing in a much different offense against much better competition. And you're watching this kid play, and you're thinking, I don't know what people are missing. This kid is 6'4", 205, and you saw the couple clips that I put on the message board the other day, and you see it on other film. This kid can fly. I mean, you get him in open field. He is that tall, vertically oriented. He's not going to be catching the ball on tunnel screens and making a million guys miss on tunnel. If he's catching a tunnel screen, he's going to plant and he's going to go. And that's something I like. And it's just his first year being a full-time receiver. He's got over 500 yards receiving. They don't throw the ball a ton. They got another receiver that's getting a lot of college looks. I like what he brings to the table. I do. And his first season really being a full-time receiver, he's been relatively productive against good teams. One of his best games came against a cornerback from, I think it's Sanford Seminole, who's getting a lot of D1, who's got D1 offers. And he had a 100-yard game against that kid. So the tools are there. He's inconsistent with his technique catching the ball, but he's got good hands. He's got a lot to learn as a route runner. He's still a very raw prospect. And he'll probably, I haven't graded him out yet, Trevor. He might grade out like 3.5 star, 4 star, like lower level right now because he's so raw, but the upside is high. And if you believe in Mike Brown as a position coach, if you're Mike Denbrock and you believe in Mike Brown as a position coach, this is the kind of kid you have to get for him because he brings strength. You watch some of the full games. This kid competes. I mean, he's like carrying dudes. There was a catch he had where he catches like a little back shoulder throw out of the backfield, and he just literally like carries 6 defenders like 6-7 yards before they can bring him down. He's a tough kid, and that comes with that defensive background. And then you watch him play basketball, and you look at some of the dunks he has, and you're like, this guy is really good. And so raw, right? We're not trying to tell you he should be a top 100 kid. They're missing this is a kid that's going to need to be developed, but you just can't teach 6'4", 205 with vertical speed, very long arms, fast hands. He can get to the ball quickly. I hadn't seen a lot of like one-on-one back shoulders from him on film. He sent me some clips of him from the summer where he was doing a lot of that in 7-on-7 stuff. And I saw, okay, I see that, right? That was the missing link for me. And when he sent me those clips and I got to see those, and again, they're clips from a 7-on-7. They're not like full games. But what I saw was, okay, physically he can do this. And that was the thing I hadn't seen on film. Could he physically do that, really flip his hips that way? I know he can run fast and he can catch over the middle. There's a play he had, I think against, might have been against Seminole, where he's running and there's 2 guys and he just kind of reaches over top of a guy, snatches the ball, brings it in. And you're just like, how did he catch that ball? But can he win the contested one-on-one back shoulder? We hadn't seen a ton of that. I know he can take a screen and just fly past the defense. So when I saw those clips, I was like, all right, cool. Physically he can do it. To see him flip his hips like that, he's not that tall, tight kid, fast, tight kid that a lot of times you see. Love the skills. Gonna need to be coached, but I love the skills. To me, this is the controversial part probably for me. If I believe, talking to sources, that Notre Dame would love to add him and Derek Meadows to the class. They want both of them, from what I'm told. If I can only have one, I'm taking Antoine Parham. I know that's not popular. I probably shouldn't say that, But that's just a fact. I don't care what the rankings say. I'm saying I see this kid's film. I see how this kid competes. I see this kid's toughness. I see how this kid's produced in really only 1 year as a receiver compared to that guy. And like I said, I'm be glad if Notre Dame gets Derek Meadows, because you can't teach 6'6", you can't teach speed, you can't teach leaping ability. Hopefully, eventually, the football part gets developed. But I'm not turning down that talent. I'd gladly take Derek Meadows from that standpoint. All I'm saying is temper your expectations with Derek Meadows, because this is a super raw player, but he's also has big time tools. My point is, I think this kid also has big time tools, but this kid is stronger and this kid is a better football player. And I think a more athletic football player. Derek may be a better athlete overall. This kid's athleticism flashes on the football field. You get what I'm saying? So it's like on the football field, he plays like a more athletic player. And that's where I'm at when I look at this kid. Is I know that people aren't going to be – some people are just going to hate it because he's a 3-star. People are going to hate it because of his offer list. I'm just telling y'all, this kid's got a lot of ability. He's a low floor, really high ceiling guy that brings something to the table, Trevor, that they just don't have a wide receiver for the future, which is that 6'4", vertical, run goes, run comebacks, run digs, run posts, and just outrun people. They don't have that. And this kid brings that to the table. I would love it if Notre Dame flipped this kid in this class. It won't move the needle perception-wise, but I'm telling you, you add this kid to your depth chart, that's going to be something.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, with kids like Antoine Parham, right, I pay attention more to the intangibles than what ratings say. Like, I know I should do a better job of paying attention to what the ratings say, but I don't get too wrapped up when people say, oh, he's only a 3-star. Like, I'm more of a – I watch the film, I see how they perform on the football field, right? Like, if his baseline, right, is being 6'4", 200 pounds and a burner, and now you just have to, like, perfect the craft a little bit, that's a good place to start. That's a really good place to start. So, yeah, I mean, he'd be a great addition to the roster. And, again, we've talked about Notre Dame's wide receiving core, and the biggest difference from last year to this year is they don't just have 6 guys that all do the same thing. They've diversified their room a little bit. Adding a guy like Antoine Parham diversifies it even more, because right now you don't have the 6'4" guy who can stretch the field vertically. I mean, closest thing you have right now, I guess, is Bo Collins at 6'3", but Bo Collins is not a burner.
Well, but Bo's gone. Bo's gone this year. That's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah,
And Deion Colsey are similar type of athletes, but they're not burners either. Deion's actually faster than Bo, but they're gone after this season.
Yep, 100%.
And then, like, your next quote unquote big guy is Micah Gilbert at 6'2", 205.
Yeah.
So he just adds a skill set that you definitely, in my opinion, need more of. There's another pretty intriguing player coming in town this weekend, Trevor. It's a young man from Pennsylvania by the name of Andrew Olesh. He's a tight end committed to Michigan. He's a good football player. He's a top 150-ish caliber player to me. Smooth. He's more of a pass catcher right now than he is sort of like the dual threat all-around guy like James Flanagan. But if Notre Dame is looking to add a second tight end who's primarily a pass catcher that complements James Flanagan, who the staff loves, by the way. But James Flanagan is more of trying to think of a comparison. He's more of I don't want to say traditional tight end, because I think that undersells his explosiveness, but he's more of a guy that a traditional tight end in that there's a blocking dominance to his game, a short game dominance to his game, but he can also stretch the field. Like, he's just a great all-around player. They'd like to complement him with more of a pass catcher type that's going to move around like sort of like a Mitchell Evans type, right? And play in the slot, play outside, catch the ball, be a good route runner, have some athleticism. And that's why they went after the Tiandre Waverly kid. That's also why they're going after Andrew Olesh. That's what he is. He is a smooth, elusive, good hands, good route running, good speed for his size type of player that really makes a big impact in the pass game. And that's why he is on the board and he's visiting this weekend. Now, recruiting-wise, Trevor, I don't feel as good about this one as I do the others. I'm not saying Notre Dame can't flip him. They're going to need a knockout visit with him. He's a PA kid. I know Penn State's looking at him. I believe Oregon is also looking at him. Penn State's the team that I hear most about from my sources is the team to look out for if he's going to flip from Michigan, which at this point in time I do anticipate he's going to flip from Michigan. I just think as of today, I think Notre Dame's probably running second for him, maybe third. But that's also because this recruitment's relatively new. And if they can really blow the visit away this weekend, I think they may have a shot to move up. But the visit's going to have to be really a big-time needle mover for him. But from a talent standpoint, it's a quality football player.
He's athletic, man. You hit the nail on the head. He's a very smooth athlete. A lot of times with tight ends in high school, they also play like defensive end. And I've watched his film. Andrew Olesh will line up at safety. And it's not like on a Hail Mary like situation where like, all right, let's just put our tallest guy back on the ground. I mean, he's playing safety in the middle of the second quarter. I mean, that's how good and smooth of an athlete this kid is. So he'd be a great addition to the room. I mean, can't emphasize it enough. Like when you have the skill to be a tight end and also a safety, which like the skill sets there outside of, I guess, just catching the football is not really a translatable skill. I mean, that's solid. That's really good. So gonna be interested to see what happens this weekend. But I'm with you. I think they're gonna have to really knock this one out of the park to get him to flip. So we'll see. Especially, factoring in you already have James Flanagan in the class and him being a Pennsylvania kid. So
I believe his dad also went to Penn State, played at Penn State also, which factors in as well.
Sure.
Which is why I never understood why he went to Michigan in the first place. So we'll see how that one goes. The last visitor, Trevor, is the biggest splash recruitment that's on campus this weekend, and also a player of a very important need, and that's Jaylen Wiggins from the state of Florida. This is a very, very intriguing player. He's from Tallahassee. He goes to Rickards High School in Tallahassee, which is interesting because he's committed to Florida, not Florida State, Florida. But he is sort of that. You talk about guys that are going to move the needle perception-wise. I think he's certainly that. He's a 6'5", 250-pound kid, plays inside, plays outside, does a little bit of everything in high school, has played a decent amount of big end. He's a guy you might be able to start off at big end when he first gets here, but he's a guy you're recruiting to grow into an interior player. Big, long. He's that typical kind of Southern SEC territory type of guy that's just got that monster frame. He's going to be 290 easily when it's all said and done. He's athletic. He's got some range for his size. He's got really strong hands. He's got a chance to be a really impactful interior pass rusher. Loads of talent with Jaylen Wiggins. And the interesting thing when you look at his recruitment, Notre Dame's been recruiting him for a very long time. And there's always been like some level of interest with him, but never enough to kind of get him to really come and really take Notre Dame seriously. But he never would tell Notre Dame no either. So it was always interesting. And like his name's been, I remember sitting in that apartment or the house that we rented when we were having our house renovations and being on the phone talking with Ryan about what I'd heard of them talking to this kid and stuff like that. So they've been on it for a while. As the season kind of went through, Florida struggled. Notre Dame stayed on him. The Notre Dame defense is killing it. And eventually he's like, okay, I want to see what Notre Dame's about. He hasn't visited anywhere else. I don't know that he's got any other visits scheduled. This is one where if Notre Dame can knock this visit out of the park, they might be able to pull off this flip. It's going to require a great visit, but you don't come visit Notre Dame officially in November if there's not legitimate interest. But Trevor, this is the kind of kid, you put him in a class with Christopher Burgess, all of a sudden this D-line class, and then, Dom Hulak, who's having a really good senior year, Joseph Reif, Gordy Solstead, Davion Dixon. Now, all of a sudden, with him and Burgess at the top, this D-line class starts to have a much different look and feel to it than it has in the past.
Yeah, I agree. It adds adding a guy like Wiggins gives you athleticism at the interior defensive line position, which is really exciting. I watched a little bit of his film before the show today, and the thing that jumps off the page to me is just how long he is. Like, he's a very lanky player, man. I mean, it's just, I was nervous to see, because sometimes when players are that long, like, they don't play with great leverage, which sometimes can be a little bit of an issue, and he plays with great leverage and has length to boot. So I think he'd be a great addition to the class, man. It'd be really exciting. It'd be really exciting.
Time. It's really going to come down to making him comfortable going that far away from home and really making sure he understands the opportunities that are in front of him on and off the field. And I'm not talking about NIL. That's obviously going to be a part of all these kids' decisions. I mean, more so like, hey, man, this is a different package than what anybody else is selling you. And the fact that he's visiting is because he's interested in that package. If he wasn't interested in that package, he wouldn't be coming in November for an official visit. So you've got to really, really sell that. And it's good that they're going to have Christopher Burgess on campus. Gordy Solstad's going to be on campus. Dom Hulak's going to be on campus. Jadon Blair is going to be on campus, who's kind of like become like the official leader of this defense. If Dallas Golden ends up coming, and as of right now, Dallas is expected to be here, I think that's going to be huge as well, because you're talking about two kind of northern Florida kids. And Jaylen's actually more northern than what Dallas is, because Dallas is in Tampa, which is kind of like like there's the Panhandle, and then there's Tampa right here. Jaylen's in the Panhandle in Tallahassee. And so you're going to have, hey, I'm from Florida. I'm making this trip. I'm coming. I'm all about Notre Dame because of what they can do for me. Hey, bro, you need to come with me. And so I think if he ends up being on campus this weekend, right now, that's the plan. I think that would be huge for Notre Dame. And, of course, you've got Antoine Parham coming up too. So you got two Florida kids coming up this weekend as Notre Dame looks to close on both of them. I'm not saying it's going to happen. What I'm saying is an impactful visit could be a big-time needle mover. I think Notre Dame has a chance. There's work to be done, but they have a good chance here because, again, this kid is not someone who Notre Dame got in on late and they're trying to flip. They've been on this kid for a long time. They were just kind of finally able to convince him, hey, we're worth giving a look. And I think how the defensive line has played in the last month is kind of eye-opening for him, because then he can look at a guy like Riley Mills and be like, oh, yeah, that's how you want to use me. Disruptive, three technique, get after the quarterback, be in the backfield all the time. Yeah, I can see myself fitting in there now. I could see myself fitting in there now. And that's kind of where Jaylen, that's the position that Jaylen Wiggins to me projects to, that really disruptive three technique with those long arms, huge body. Like I said, he'll be 290 with no problem, and eventually he'll probably be a 300-plus pound kid. I mean, he's just got a great frame. So this is a big one for Notre Dame. So those are the four official visitors, Trevor. There's three unofficial visitors from 2025 that are also going to be on campus that are huge recruits for Notre Dame. Notre Dame, number one, is Ant VR. What I said was the school he was at in Georgia before he transferred to Coconut Creek is an under-recruited area. That's what he is. He's only been at Monarch for a year. This is the only year he's been there. Where he was at in Georgia, which is why he doesn't have the offers that you would expect, because most schools, by the time they get to their senior seasons, their boards are set. They know who they're recruiting. The classes are filled. You don't see as many of these type of late bloomers pop up. That's what I said. So no, Coconut Creek is not what I said is under-recruited. I said the school he came from in Georgia is an under-recruited area. So just so we're clear on that. One school that's not under-recruited is IMG Academy. And another school that's not under-recruited is Bishop Gorman in Nevada. And Notre Dame will have a kid from both of those schools this weekend, along with Madden Faramo. These are the three sort of crown jewels of Notre Dame's desired class for the defensive side that they've been on forever. If you want to talk about like a dream scenario for Notre Dame on the defensive side of the ball, it's flip Jaylen Wiggins, get Madden Faramo and Nathaniel Usu-Boateng. And then it's kind of like, okay, who's got a better class than us? That's the argument Notre Dame's making. Who's got a better linebacker class than us? Don't know if anybody does. Who's got a better secondary class than us? Don't know if anybody does. Now your D-line class has two top 100 caliber guys on it. Okay, plus depth. Now you're like, all right, this is going to be very interesting. So that's sort of that inside straight perfection that they're looking to do. Nathaniel Usu-Boateng's interesting because there's some mixed messages on how his Michigan visit went. And I kind of felt like Michigan might have been the team to beat coming into that visit. Notre Dame's been right up there with him. They've been the team to beat at times, but I think he's kind of back and forth on what he wants to do right now. This is sort of that final, hey, what is this kid going to be? Right? What is this kid going to be? Or what does this kid want to do? I think is where it's at, right? Does he really want to be here? Is he really bought into what we're trying to do? Every time he's visited, he leaves loving Notre Dame. Is it enough? And is there enough time between now and signing day, or is there too much time between now and signing day for somebody else to kind of get in there? That's going to be the question. That's going to be the question. So we're going to find out here real soon if they've got a shot to really close the deal with him. Now, sources I talk to feel like they're right there with him, but anytime a kid kind of has a handler that goes with him to like all the different schools and likes to insert himself into the recruitment stuff, that not that the guy's a bad, I don't know the guy. He may be a great guy, may have the kid's best interest at heart. I just always get a little bit nervous about those. We're ending well for Notre Dame. They just don't often end well for Notre Dame. And it doesn't have anything to do with his particular handler. For all I know, that guy could have 100% have Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng's best interest at heart. I don't know. I have no clue. I don't know the person. I'm just simply saying, last couple of years since this whole thing started, guys that have handlers outside the family, Notre Dame's track record with those guys isn't great. And that's the thing that gives me a little bit of pause there. The other linebacker on campus is Madden Faramo. Absolute dude. They're two different. Him and Nathaniel are two different players. Madden is sort of like a Mike Will that can maybe play Viper down the road, but I want to see what he does as a Mike or a Will. You know, he's sort of that next in line player. Great. He's a lot like Kingston. You know, strong, physical, smart, instinctive, more athletic than you'd think with his body type. He's got explosiveness. Like he's an outstanding top 100 caliber player. Notre Dame has been sort of the team to beat for a while, Trevor. He's got 2 visits left. He's visiting Notre Dame this weekend, and he's visiting USC. He's visiting USC on November 30th. Who does USC play on November 30th? So his last 2 visits, this young man's going to be watching Notre Dame play. So Notre Dame's going to get 2 cracks to really show this kid what he can do. I'll put it to you like this. I'd rather be where Notre Dame is than where anybody else is. But now you got to close. And this is a very thoughtful, smart kid. He really wants to make sure he's making the right decision. I think he's liked Notre Dame for a long time, but he also likes other schools, Texas, USC. I think people ask, why is he taking so long? Because I think he's a smart kid that understands I'm going to make this decision once. I'm not flipping from anywhere. I don't want to jump into portal in a year or 2. I want to make a decision that is going to be an impactful. This is where I'm going. So I'm going to spend my college years. Am I going to, because like I would often ask kids this, if you look at the schools you like best, if you took football away, where would you want to be? And I think that sometimes can be that final decision maker of, okay, take the football side out of it. They're all great football options. What place can do more for me with football removed from the conversation? And he's putting a lot of thought into that. And that's what I think is dragging this process out a lot longer than a lot of us would like to. So I mean, that's kind of you get those 3 uncommitted kids on defense, and this is an elite defense. It's already an outstanding defensive class. You get 2 of these 3 kids, it's an elite defensive class. You get through all 3 of these kids, I just don't know who's got a better defensive class. I really don't. It's you add those 3 guys with Mark Zachary, Dallas Golden, Cree Thomas at corner, Jadon Blair, Ethan Long, Brandon Logan, who had a great senior year. Just knocked off Elkhart, by the way, this past weekend. Had a pick 6 in that game. Did you hear about that?
I did.
He had a pick 6 in that game. And then you've got Anthony Sacca, who's a top 100 recruit at linebacker. Josiah Kia had a great senior year. You've got Christopher Burgess, who's a top 100 to 150 kid. You've got Joseph Reef, who's a 4-star kid. Gordy Solstead, high ceiling kid. Davion Dixon. Dom Hulax having a really good senior year. He's now jumping up in the rankings. This has a chance to be a truly special class if you can finish. It's going to be if they don't sign anybody else on defense, Trevor, it's an outstanding defensive haul. If they can close well, it's an elite haul, like a truly elite haul at all phases. And that's what's at stake for Notre Dame with this defensive class.
Yeah, it's one of those hauls that you in a couple years down the road, we can sit back and look back and say, based on what the team is made up of, the 24 class and the 25 classes, 11 of the 11 starters on defense, right? So that is kind of what's at stake. But I'm with you. I mean, even if they don't sign these kids, it's still a really good defensive class. But that's what kind of takes it to the upper echelon of defensive recruiting, is getting these kids. So it's going to be a big weekend on campus. And, overall, I think Notre Dame has done a really good job this year of taking advantage of winning the games that they need to show some of these kids that, like, the best football doesn't happen in the South. right? Like they have an opportunity to beat Florida State at home at night. And they've already beaten Texas A&M at Kyle Field, and they beat Georgia Tech down in Atlanta. And, so I think Notre Dame is kind of taking care of business in that aspect. Now, next thing is they have to take care of business against Florida State. Now, I know recruits kind of look at the team and the program differently than the fans do win-loss, but, I regardless of Florida State's overall record, I don't think it's any mystery that, they're bringing all of these top-end recruit guys in for a night game. Because if you guys have ever seen or been at a night game at Notre Dame Stadium, it just hits a little different, man. It's really fun. It's really cool. The environment's awesome. And you have just more time to go through things throughout the day because you're not having to be at the stadium by noon and, going through pregame warmups by 1:00. So I'm interested to see how they do this weekend for all these big time recruits coming onto campus.
Last one on the list, Trevor. Derek Meadows, 4-star kid, top 100 player, committed to LSU, Bishop Gorman. One of the most polarizing prospects I've seen Notre Dame recruit in a long time, because there's a group of people that kind of view him as like this elite guy because he's ranked high. He's all these things. And then there's other people that look at him like me, for example, and I'm saying, yeah, I get the tools, but like, guys never produced in high school, right? Like you guys are looking at him as like the savior for the receiving corps. I look at him as a very talented, but very raw project type of guy. But whatever you think about him, you can't teach 6'6", you can't teach speed, you can't teach leaping ability, you can't teach the tools. And the fact is he's a kid that Notre Dame has wanted for a very long time.
I think that if Notre Dame were able to flip a guy like Derek Meadows, I think it's going to speak volumes for where the program is at in terms of recruiting wide receivers. I mean, LSU has been one of the most dominant schools when it comes to recruiting wide receivers over the last, call it decade, right? Now, at one point in time, they had Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry, and then they go out and they get, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and all these guys, and then they get Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors. And so, if Notre Dame is able to flip a guy like Derek Meadows away from a team like LSU, I think that bodes really, really well for just the future of recruiting at that position. Brian, I'm kind of with you. I watched the kid's film, and things are very obvious. Like he has really good high point ability with the football, but he's also 6'6", so he should, right? Like he's a very long strider, so it might not look like he's running that fast. I'm not saying that he's a burner, but he strides out very well. But I think what this does overall, looking at this big picture, is if Notre Dame is able to flip a kid from LSU who is known for recruiting elite level wide receivers, I think that's going to start turning the narrative around that, yep, Notre Dame's always going to recruit great offensive linemen, great defensive players, and great running backs, right? And now if you go and you flip a kid that is this highly thought of nationally, he's a top 100 guy, 4-star recruit, the 6'6" wide receiver. Those are the guys that typically don't come to Notre Dame. So I think it would do really well for Notre Dame big picture. That's where I'm at with Derek Meadows.
The other good news is he's starting to turn it on a little bit in high school. He's actually he's never had a 100-yard game in his career until Friday. Had his first 100-yard game. And then the week before that, he had 86. So he's starting to turn it on a little bit production-wise, but the tools are there. As far as where they are, I still think still don't feel like Notre Dame's going to flip him. I know they're going to try hard. As I said before, they'd love to add Meadows and Parham to the class. I think right now, I would say Notre Dame's probably still running third behind LSU and Michigan. If Michigan flips Bryce Underwood, I think they might be hard to beat for Derek Meadows. If they don't flip Bryce Underwood, then I think Notre Dame will have a much better shot there, in my opinion. But, we'll see kind of how it plays out. But that's the other visitor. There's some 26 kids that are going to be on campus this weekend that are important prospects. We won't get into those right now. I'll list who they are right now. DeZephan Walker, who's a running back from Missouri, talented player. Connor Solomon, who's one of my favorite 2026 kids. He is an absolute burner. You want to talk about getting burners in the class? He is a burner. He is a big-time musket guy. There's an offensive lineman from Florida whose last name I do not know how to pronounce that they've been recruiting multiple times. Samote Katoanga, who is a defensive lineman who's from California, high school teammate of Madden Ferremo's coming. They offered him this summer. Tank King, we'll have a story coming out tomorrow with Tank King. Sean Davis interviewed him. He'll be on campus tomorrow. Thomas Davis Jr. will be visiting this weekend. RJ Sermons will be visiting this weekend. Another very talented player that Notre Dame likes a lot. Jacob Weatherspoon is going to be visiting this campus. He's a 26 corner that Notre Dame staff likes a lot. And then Jet Washington, who I believe is Kobe Bryant's nephew, I believe. And also a kid from Bishop Gorman will be on campus this weekend as well. Including, here's an interesting one. There's a 2028 running back on campus this weekend by the name of Xander Edwards, whose dad, Mark, played at Notre Dame. He plays, I believe, at the Bowl School in Florida. He's a freshman, but very talented player for his age. I'm very curious to see how he kind of develops over these next couple of years and if he becomes a Notre Dame caliber guy. I just don't recruit freshmen unless they're insanely Ronald Curry, Plexico Burris types, but very talented player. So it's a great group of it's without question their best group of visitors of the season. There's no question about it. This is a huge recruiting weekend. How this weekend goes for Notre Dame recruiting is going to tell us just how good this class can be. It really will. I mean, if they're able to somehow close with Antoine Parham, I really like this receiver class. I do. If they're somehow able to finish with Parham and Derek Meadows, you're like, all right, I don't know, that's a pretty darn good finish. But even if it's just Parham, I'm really happy about adding him and Scrap Richardson to a class that already had Elijah Burris. And you've got James Flanagan at tight end. If you're able to get Nolan James, that's an upgrade. I mean, I love that kid at running back. And then, of course, we talked a lot about Jaylen Wiggins and the two linebackers. So there's 7 kids on campus this week. And if they can get 5 of those, that's elite. If they get 4 of those, that's pretty big time. That locks them into a 4-star, a clear top 10 class for me, creeping up on the top 4, depending on which 4 that is. So that's kind of where I'm kind of coming from with that one. So big weekend of recruiting, Trevor. We'll see how they close. We'll have as many updates as we can here when the weekend rolls out. And of course, we'll put all those on the message board at boards.Irish Breakdown as we get that news from this big weekend. So Trevor, that's going to do it for this. We got one more segment coming up. It's a pretty important one, pretty big one. It's called Buy, Sell, Hold. We'll get to that next, folks. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review. And if you've not done so, sign up for the message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So, Trevor, it's Buy, Sell, Hold time, man. You ready to go?
Is.
You up for this, man? You sure you're ready for this? This is this is a little taxing, man. Are you feeling good? You feeling all right? You ready to rock and roll with this?
I always feel good enough for Buy, Sell, Hold.
All right. Let's do it. Well, you guys know the rules. Buy, Sell, Hold is a segment where that is for our subscribers at Irish Breakdown. So those who have part of our either monthly membership, annual membership, booster club, any of those great ways to be part of our community, they get to present these questions. They go on the message board every week, and then we bring them up from that. If you want to have a message that's on there, and if you're not a member or if you didn't get a question in, then you can give us a super chat. But this is for premium members only at this point in time, unless you give a super chat. Lots of good submissions today, Trevor. A lot about this game. Also some stuff about the playoff. So some very intriguing stuff. So I am ready to rock and roll with today's Buy, Sell, Hold.
Let's do it. Buy, Sell, Hold from Irish Fan 11. Riley Leonard will finish the 2024 season with the highest Notre Dame quarterback completion percentage since 2018.
All right. So let me just go back and look at this, because my first thought is to say no. But he's at 66.2. That's obviously a lot higher than Sam was last year. Where was Jack? Oh, he's above Jack, 65.5. So that would be since Ian Book of 68.2. I could even see him being higher than that, to be completely honest with you. When you look at who they're playing down the stretch. But yeah, 66.2, he'd have to have a pretty rough final 4 games to finish below 65.5, which is the next highest with Jack Cohn since 20. Ian Book was at 68.2, but Ian also came off the bench that year. He didn't start the season as a starter. So yeah, that'd be impressive. Pretty interesting for people who are like, he's not accurate. Completion percentage isn't the end all be all when it comes to accuracy, but you also can't complete over 66% of your passes if you don't have some level of accuracy as a player. So yeah. I'll buy that. I'll buy that.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to finish bad enough to where he would fall below Jack.
No,
it's possible. It's what, 0.7, right? I feel like I'm watching the election results again. It's like, okay, well, look, if this next voting dump comes in and this 0.7, how much can it swing? And it's like, no, hold on, we're talking about something different right now. Yeah, I mean, you have to have a couple rough games to fall below Jack, and then not have other really good games to counter that. You know what I mean? So, yeah, next two games will tell us that, because these are two not great pass defenses.
Buy, sell, hold from Notre Dame. Alumnus in Minnesota. Indiana is the most surprising team that came out of nowhere since Northwestern in 1995.
I mean, I'm trying to think of anybody. I mean, I'm sure if I sat and thought about it, there might be somebody else. I mean, it came out of nowhere to be this. I mean, that's in the Big Ten, sure. I mean, who saw LSU being quite as good as they were in 2019? Maybe you could say, when you look at Indiana's ceiling compared to LSU's, maybe. But I mean, Indiana was what, 3-9 last year. I mean, and like you could say, okay, well, remember when Notre Dame finished 4-8 in 2016, and the next year yeah, but Notre Dame had a bad year in 2016. They were really good the year before that. Indiana hasn't been good for a while, and their quote unquote good years, like they had the COVID year, but their good years are years where they're like 8-win team. Like they've literally never started 9-0 ever. I think I heard that the other day. They've never had a 9-0 start, and they're just smashing people, dude. I mean, that's the thing about it is like, okay, yeah, they haven't played Ohio State. They haven't played Penn State. They haven't played Oregon. Okay, fine. It's Indiana, right? We're not talking about like Michigan has, like last year when Michigan beat up bad teams like this. It's Indiana. You know what I mean? And it's year one of the coach. And so when you talk about over the course of an entire season, no, I'd have to think about it and go through seasons, Trevor. But there's nobody that pops off the top of my head that's gone from like, let's just look at the numbers real quick, Trevor, just to kind of put some context into this. Last year, Indiana, and it's not just the offense that's the improvement. Last year, Indiana was 3-9. They had, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 of their 9 losses were by single digits. They lost by 27, 27, 45, 17, 9, 3 to Illinois, who stunk, 3 at home to Michigan State, who wasn't very good, 4 points on the road to Purdue, who stinks. They averaged 22.2 points per game, and they gave up 29.9 points per game. Fast forward 1 year, their closest win is by 14 points. They went from 22.2 points per game on offense to 46.6. They went from giving up 29.9 points per game to dropping down to 13.7. They've only allowed 2 of their 9 opponents to score more than 20 points. Like, that is an incredible turnaround in one season. Like, I don't know that I could point to someone. I'd have to kind of go through every year and kind of pick one.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, I don't know about that Northwestern team in 1995 because I was negative 2 years old. But I will say, for the Indiana being the most surprising team from my lifetime, I would say yes, just because one, like I can't think of anyone else that would, right? No, I mean, I can think of teams that had like surprising wins, but like a team like over the course of a season, I can't think of one. I can't think of one at all. ND Alumnus in Minnesota with another buy, sell, hold. Or Brian, did you have something else for?
No, I was telling you, like,
okay.
I'm good. We can go to the next one.
Cool.
Unless you want to be here till 9 o'clock.
No, you know what? As fun as that sounds.
Mr. I'm always ready for a 5-hour show.
Asterisk, except for today. Yeah. Sorry. Another buy, sell, hold. When considering their entire careers, most of which has yet to happen, Ben Morrison will be considered no better than the third best cornerback on the 2024 Notre Dame football team.
Okay. So I see some of the harsh reactions to him in the chat to this, but that's kind of what the point of these submissions are. It's not always, I believe this to be true. It's to say something that kind of gets some discussion, right? To talk about. But no, the answer is still sell. And Benjamin Morrison is still the best cornerback they had this year. There were times Christian Gray played better than him, partly because Christian Gray was getting tested and nobody was throwing at Benjamin. And so, no, Benjamin Morrison's still their best corner. What happened to Benjamin is he's being graded on a curve compared to Leonard Moore and Christian Gray. In that the evaluation that people are making is not, okay, if you just take out any context, who's played better? How would you rank them? Where I think a lot of people are thinking like, and Leonard Moore's been a heck of a player. Don't get me wrong, Trevor. And like we tried to tell you guys for a year that he was a legitimately good player, just like I told you when Benjamin Morrison was a really good football player. But because his expectations were so high, if he plays at this level, right? So here's his expectations for Benjamin, right? Look at it this way. His expectations were here, but he plays here. So it's considered disappointing. Where Leonard Moore's expectations were here and he plays here, and now people think he's better than Benjamin Morrison because he's outplaying the expectations of what you thought from him, where Benjamin Morrison, inaccurately in my opinion, is being viewed as not having as good of a season as you thought he should have had. He was still outstanding. Fewer yards allowed per catch than last year, fewer yards allowed per game than last year, lower completion percentage allowed through compared to last year, and he had yet to give up a touchdown at the time he got hurt. Yeah, there's a couple plays he got beat. That's going to happen for cornerbacks that play nothing but man-to-man all the time, especially when they're playing the boundary where they're normally matched up against the other team's best receiver. So I think there was a lot more said about his play that I don't agree with. Some of the harshness about Benjamin's play. Benjamin was a really good corner this year. That's just how was he as elite as we thought he could be? No, but take that away and just who was better? He's still their best corner. And and Christian's number 2, and then Leonard's number 3 right now. But no, Benjamin Morrison was still their best cornerback and all around cornerback. Now I think there's things that Leonard does better than Benjamin, especially like in run support, because he's already like 10 pounds heavier than Benjamin and stronger and 2-3 inches taller than Benjamin. But no, Benjamin Morrison was still an outstanding cornerback and the best cornerback on his football team.
Yep. Buy, sell, hold from Older Than Dirt. Pending the results of the late push for wide receiver recruits, Mike Denbrock and Mike Brown will want one of Leonard Moore, Bronte Johnson, Dallas Golden, Jadon Blair, or Mark Zachary to join the wide receiver room in 2025. Marcus Freeman and the defensive coaches will have a hard time refusing that request.
So they don't need to do that. I mean, look, if you get no receivers down the stretch, you still have Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison, KK Smith, Cam Williams, Micah Gilbert, Logan Soldate, Elijah Burris, Antavius Richardson, and Jerome Bettis Jr. That's 9 receivers right there. You could also bring back Jaden Thomas. That's 10 receivers right there. Right? You're okay there. Is it great? I mean, some guys got to step up, but there's a lot of talent there and potential there. And if you don't like that group, go to the portal again and get another guy. Like, there's no need to steal from one position that's loaded to help another position unless you're going to make a full-time move. And I'm just not doing that, because you look at cornerback, for example. Yeah, they're really talented at cornerback, but it's Leonard Moore, it's Christian Gray, it's Carson Hobbs. And if Benjamin Morrison doesn't come back, that's it. That's all they have. You know what I mean? So you're not going to move Leonard. You'd be nuts to move Leonard Moore over there. And you'd also be nuts to move Dallas Golden or Mark Zachary over there, in my opinion. You need them at corner. They are going to be the depth at corner next year. And Jadon Blair, Jadon Blair could be a good receiver at Notre Dame, no doubt. He can be an elite safety. And that's another position where that is needed. They need that player there with where the current depth chart is, the lack of depth they have behind the 2 veterans that are going to be gone next year in Rod Hurd and Xavier Watts. It's a Don Schuler, it's Luke Talich, it's Ben Minnick, and then the freshman, right? And then you'll bring in next year's class. So no, the need, the numbers need is greater in the secondary for this class to pick up than it is a receiver. Notre Dame doesn't have a numbers problem at receiver. Guys got to step up and play better. So I'm definitely selling that.
Yeah, I'm selling it as well. I don't like the idea of stealing depth from one room to go head hunting for like a breakout wide receiver. Because the receiving room right now has the talent. They need to step up their game. I agree with you 100%.
Mike Brown, you're supposed to be a good football coach. I think you are a good football coach. Go get Cam Williams ready to be a star.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like go work on getting Mike. You know what I mean? You got the tools. Go develop those guys.
Right.
That's what I want to see. I don't want to see them trying to go for those type of things. I just don't.
Buy, sell, hold from P. Hamilton 16. Tennessee makes the college football playoffs.
As of right now, I have that as a buy. I have Tennessee. I'd have to go and look at my breakdown, but I believe I had them as a 12 seed, Trevor, in the college football playoff. Or no, it was an 11 seed. Yeah, I had them as an 11 seed, and then SMU was my 12 seed. If Tennessee only loses to Georgia in a competitive game, which right now I think it'll be right now I project them to go 10-2 with a loss to Georgia with the rest of their schedule. I believe it's at home. No, it's at Georgia. I think Georgia wins that game. I don't think Tennessee has enough offense to win that game, but Tennessee's defense, I believe, is good enough to make that a close game, even maybe pull off the upset. I need to see more from the Tennessee offense. Their offense has been a mess for over a month. I need to see that play better for me to think they can win that game. But as long as it's competitive, you're going to be 10-2 at the end of the year. You're going to have a win over Alabama. You're going to have a win over Vanderbilt. You're going to have a pretty darn good loss to Georgia. You know, NC State's getting better, so that's going to look better on your resume. I think, and they're probably the fourth highest ranked SEC team, which I think puts them in as of right now. I don't think it's a lock by any stretch. If they get blown out by Georgia, I think they could fall out. If Texas A&M beats Texas and plays for the SEC title, I think that might knock Tennessee out because that would not put A&M in. Texas would still be in with 2 losses over Tennessee, in my opinion. So it's far from a lock for them. But as of today, with what I see projecting, barring upsets and some things happening, I do think that Tennessee, as of right now, would sneak in the back of that top 25. And of course, if they beat Georgia, it's pretty much a lock that they're going to be in at that point in time.
Another buy, sell, hold from P. Hamilton 16. Alabama versus LSU is a playoff elimination game.
Buy. I don't think either one of those teams are going to have the resume to get in with 3 losses. I don't. Because you're not going to take out a two-loss SEC team. Like, let's say you're not going to have – like, the only way that could happen is if Clemson somehow gets into the ACC title game and then they – you know, let's say SMU gets upset by somebody and somehow Clemson sneaks in and they get in and they lose to Miami and they're a 3-loss team. They're probably not going to get in, shouldn't get in. But if SMU goes 11-1 and plays Miami in the ACC title game and loses in a close game, they're probably going to, with some very good wins on their schedule, they're going to be a top 25, top 12 team ahead of Alabama or LSU loser, the loser of that game, not the winner of that game, but the loser of that game. And, they both have good schedules, but neither of them are good enough, in my opinion. And the thing that hurts LSU is they got that really bad loss to USC. That's like where at least Alabama can say, hey, listen, we lost to 2 good football teams. And, they both spent time ranked this year and all that other, like legitimately ranked, like not preseason ranked, but like proving it on the field in 2024 ranked. Alabama's got a much more competitive schedule than LSU. And LSU's schedule is good. Don't get me wrong. It just, they're kind of suffering through a little bit what Notre Dame suffered through with, that USC game was supposed to be a huge game. And at USC was going to be, you thought it'd be a good loss. You lose to a 9-10 USC team. Now it's going to look like you might lose to a 6-6 USC team. So I think it is an elimination game. I think of those 2, Bama has the best shot of getting in with the 3rd loss.
Yeah.
Because they'll have the Georgia win and they'll have lost LSU on the road, which would be a good loss. Yeah. Now the question is, what if Alabama loses to LSU and then LSU gets beat by somebody? They both have 3 losses right now. And that's when it could get interesting. But as of right now, I believe this is a playoff game, elimination game.
Buy, sell, hold from Aiden Benami. Tay Johnson will surprise people how well he does at cornerback.
I mean, I have no idea. I'm hope by that one. So I hope so. I hope he impresses them so much that they're like, hey, we got to figure out a way to get him into the rotation at safety next year. I don't want him to be a full-time corner. But if he can thrive at corner, I think if you move him back to safety, it gives you some really good stuff to do with him at safety. I could also understand with the shoulder injuries he's had that they may say, hey, look, I don't know if we want him to take that bang at safety. Maybe they make that decision. But you always want a guy to impress you doing something that you like, wow, this kid's a lot more versatile than we thought.
Yeah, and I mean, depending on how he does, maybe he'd be a good fit for the nickel down the road. Who knows? Right. So, I mean, I hope so. I'm with you. Buy, sell, hold again from Aiden Benami. You expected Tay to move to cornerback.
So I didn't expect that. I mean, he's a versatile kid. He's certainly certainly possible, but no, I would have projected receiver before I would have projected corner. I'm not shocked by it because they have a need there, and he's a versatile kid that can flip his hips and run, but I did not expect it, no.
Another buy, sell, hold from Aiden Benami. Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng commits to the worst of the worst scum.
That would be Michigan. Sell, I think as of right now, I probably would not project him to go to Michigan. It's still a possibility, but as of right now, that would not be my read on it, so I'll sell that.
Buy, sell, hold. We have 3+ flips to Notre Dame.
Are we including guys that have already flipped, or are we just talking about guys left over? If we're talking about guys that have already flipped, I'll buy that because I think they're kind of already there. They flipped Antavius Richardson, right? They flipped Cam Herron, and they flipped Brandon Logan. Although I don't count him because he was a commit for baseball, so I don't really count that. They flipped the quarterback, so that's 3, just right there. They didn't flip any of the linebackers. None of the offensive linemen besides Herron, which you mentioned already. Flanagan. None of the D linemen were flipped. Defensive linemen were flips, were they? Davion Dixon wasn't a flip. Burgess wasn't a flip. I don't believe Solstead was a flip. Reef wasn't a flip, and Hulak wasn't a flip. So I mean that's 3 right there. So if you're talking about just overall, yes, set buy. If you're talking about of the guys that aren't committed yet, will you flip 3 guys? As of right now, I will confidently say I feel good about 2. Talk to me again next Wednesday, and I'll have a better sense of the 3rd. That's where I'm at right now. So hold. I got to see how the visits go this weekend.
Buy, sell, hold from Aiden Benami. You are slightly worried about the Florida State upset.
Sell.
Yeah.
Like I don't need this. No. I'm slightly worried about it's an ugly game that Notre Dame wins. I'm not worried about it being an upset. That would be a disaster. That would be the worst loss of Marcus Freeman's tenure.
Easily.
By far.
Yeah.
By far.
Buy, sell, hold. 1 week later, Notre Dame would still beat IU by 10+ points.
Were you that blown away by their win over a sub 500 Michigan State team that you think I was going to change my opinion? So sell. I have not changed my. Indiana's a really good football team. Talk to me after they play Ohio State. Look, and that doesn't take anything away from that was a heck of a win, beating Michigan State the way they did. Heck of a win. But yeah.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Buy, sell, hold from Eye on the Ball. Notre Dame starts Steve Angeli in Game 1, 2025 versus Miami. Lowest risk play.
Sell. That would be, I'm just going to sell that one for now. Sell.
Another buy, sell, hold from Eye on the Ball. Notre Dame starts Kenny Minchie or CJ Carr in Game 1 in 2025 without any meaningful playing time during the 2024 season, based primarily on performance in spring and fall practice sessions. Second lowest risk play.
Buy. I think they're going to start the guy that gives them the best chance to compete as the season goes on, not the guy who necessarily gives them the best chance to compete in that opener. I think those 2 things will be the same. I think Kenny or CJ will separate themselves to where it's a little bit of both. You're playing for the future of the season, but you're also, hey, this guy's an impact player. No, he doesn't have experience, but you got to give him experience somehow. And let's just say you're going to start Steve, and then you're going to get that guy in the next game. Well, now that guy's not prepared to go play A&M. So if he's your guy, play him. So I'm gonna buy that.
Yeah, I'm gonna buy it too. I think that was a really good submission. Eye on the ball, buy, sell, hold. If Steve Angeli starts the first 2 games of 2025, Notre Dame will be 1-1 to start the year.
Well, I don't know who their second game is against, so I'm going to have to hold on that one as well, because right now there's a bye in between the A&M and Miami games, so I'll have to hold on that one for now. But I don't feel great about Steve Angeli going to Miami to beat them right now, but Miami's going to look a lot different next year than they do right now. Who's Miami's quarterback? I don't know the answer to that.
Another buy, sell, hold from Eye on the Ball. A 1-on-1 start to 2025 forces Marcus Freeman to either start Kenny or CJ in game number 3, or Marcus Freeman starts an experienced portal quarterback he picks up along the way.
Well, I'm selling that because I don't think he's going to wait till game 3 to do that, and I think it would be silly to not start him against Miami because you're worried about the magnitude of the game, and then you're going to start him against Texas A&M. Like, that just would be kind of self-defeating, just would be kind of look, go with your guy and then let him develop, let him play. That's the key. So, and I don't think they're going to start. So if I bought the first one, then I'm going to obviously have to sell this one also. If I bought the first question about these two from the last submission, then I have to sell this one.
Yeah, I'm going to sell it for just a handful of reasons. I mean, one, Marcus Freeman and Mike Denbrock, they don't strike me as like flavor of the week quarterback guys, right? I mean, the only thing that you can allude to, I guess, is 2022, but Tyler Buckner got hurt. It's not like he got benched because he wasn't performing well enough for Drew Pine, right? And if they pick up an experienced portal quarterback, I don't think that he would then get the start over Kenny or CJ if Notre Dame in this hypothetical situation starts out 1-1. But Brian, I'm with you. I'm selling it because I don't think they would wait until game 3 to start Kenny or CJ. I think it would be from rip.
We addressed the portal quarterback last week. I don't think they're going to get a portal quarterback as a starter.
No. Buy, sell, hold from JP is for Notre Dame. The Florida State actual disaster in 2025 versus expectations for Florida State in 2025 is the greatest in many years for any Division I college football program.
I feel like Indiana I don't know if you've seen these movies, Trevor. They used to be kind of popular when I was younger. Actually, there was one with Ryan Reynolds and Jason Bateman, where like they switch bodies. You know what I mean? And I feel like there was someone put some Pete in a what was that thing, that statue, and the water, not a waterfall. What's it called?
Like a fountain?
Fountain. Yeah, fountain. And they switch bodies. And I feel like somebody did that to Florida State and Indiana.
Yeah.
Like, Indiana is what Florida State should be, and Florida State is what Indiana's always been.
Yeah.
Right? And you're seeing this. So somebody asked, is Indiana the best positive turnaround I've ever seen? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, yeah. Is Florida State the worst I've seen from a Division I? Yeah, they are. I mean, they're worse than 07 Notre Dame. Because 07 Notre Dame was super young. I mean, they were starting freshmen. I mean, their starting quarterback was a freshman. Their best receiver that year, Deval Kamara, was a freshman. They played Armando Allen and Robert Hughes, who were freshmen that season. I mean, they were a super young team, Trevor. When you look at Florida State, it's like, it's amazing because, yeah, they're not good, but then you look at it and it's like, okay, redshirt freshman at quarterback. Okay, here's the rest of their starting lineup. Redshirt senior, sophomore, redshirt senior, senior, redshirt senior, redshirt senior, redshirt junior, redshirt senior, redshirt sophomore, redshirt senior. That's your starting offense. Defensively, redshirt junior, redshirt junior, redshirt junior, junior, senior, redshirt sophomore, senior, redshirt senior, junior, redshirt junior, redshirt freshman. This is not a young football team where you can look at Notre Dame in 07 and be like, hey, they're going to be okay, offensively, because once Jimmy gets down there, they're going to be all right. They're just young. Defense, I don't know about that side of the ball, but offensively, they should still be okay. But you could understand that horrible season because they were super young. This isn't exactly a young football team. You know what I mean? Like, this is a pretty veteran football team that's just awful. I don't know that I've ever seen a team go from legit 13-1, legit should have been in the college football playoff, legitimately got screwed out of the college football playoff, to this train wreck. never seen anything like it.
Yeah,
That I can think of. I just can't remember anything like it.
It's one of the biggest fall offs in like sports. I mean, it's crazy. Across the board. I mean, just going from a bubble playoff team, undefeated regular season conference champions to, and not just not bowl eligible, right? Like, it's not like they're going to finish the season 5-7.
Right. Like somebody brought up TCU in the chat. You know, TCU went to the Natty. They were sub 500 the next year. Like TCU, I believe, still went 5-7 the next year, right? I mean, so they went to the Natty in 2022, 13-2. The next year they went 5-7, and they lost a game by 3, another game by 3, another game by 7, another game by 3. You know what I mean? Like, this is 1-8 and may go 2-10. Like, this is way worse than what TCU was.
And an argument could be made they have yet to play a competitive football game. Like, I know Georgia Tech was close, but if you watch that game, Georgia Tech handled them in the trenches.
The Cal game's the only one, the one win they have that they needed to come from behind. But like Memphis, they made it close. I was never thought, gee, I think Florida State might win this game. Boston College was never competitive. Like, honestly, since the opener, the only competitive game they've played is the win over Cal. That's it. Where you actually watch that game, you're thinking, I think they got a shot to win. I watched the Memphis game. I never thought they had a shot to win that game. You're just like, Memphis is just letting them hang around. It was more of that than it was actually a competitive game. Like, that 20-12 final score, Trevor, does not indicate how out of that game Florida State was. That's terrible. I've never seen anything like it in my life.
It's crazy. It is crazy. Another buy-sell hold from JP. USC is the best 5-loss Division I college football team in many years.
No, I saw that. I mean, look, I get where you're coming from on this one. And when you look at their 5 losses, I mean, each one's been by 7 points or less. Actually, 3 points, 7 points, 3 points, 1 point, 5 points. But the reality is you're not best anything when you literally cannot win on the road. They are literally, Trevor, winless on the road. Because the LSU game was a neutral site game. They have lost every single road game they've played so far this season. So, they're competitive losses, but they're teams that they have no business. It's not like they're 4-5 against the Notre Dame 2017 schedule, where they've got to play Georgia, top 10, 15 in Michigan State, top 10 Miami, top 25 Stanford, top 15 what USC was that year, 9-win NC State, Boston College with 2 high draft picks on the D line. Like, that's not who they're playing this year. LSU in a bowl game. They're playing Minnesota and losing, Maryland and losing. Like, they had to come from behind down 21-10 against Wisconsin, who's average. Like, Washington's not very good. Washington's 5-4. I mean, they're not losing to a gauntlet schedule, and you could argue that the 2 best games they've played all year were against the 2 best teams they've played all year, LSU and Penn State. But I'm selling that.
Yeah, I am too.
Trev, I don't know if they're the best 4-5 team in this season. Like, I was looking at the schedule. There's a couple teams. I'm like, man, that team's 4-5. Man, that's a surprise. I have to go find a couple of those, because I was having this conversation the other day, or this thought process the other day. Like, man, there's some couple teams that have losing records. You're like, but I've watched that team play. I feel like they're better than that. But anyway, I'm selling that one.
I'm with you.
And I don't know if that would be something I would want to be my claim to fame. Hey, we're the best losing team in the country. I don't know that I would want that to be my claim to fame.
No. Buy-sell hold from Riker Ferg. Brian Kelly will get angry in the post-game press conference after losing to Alabama.
I'm hope buying that. I don't know. I don't know who I'm going to pick in that game, Trevor. I know we got to pick it for our predictions, but I'm still not sure who I want to pick in that game. I'm leaning towards Alabama, but LSU is also a hard team to beat at home and has been under Brian Kelly as well, especially at night. And you say, well, remember they lost Tennessee? Yeah, it was like a noon kickoff. It's a different environment, different atmosphere. So I'm going to hope by that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna hope by it too, because one, it's just funny watching Brian Kelly lose, and it's even funnier watching him get mad. So I'm hope buying it as well. Another buy sell hold from Riker Ferg. Wisconsin Badgers go at best 2-1 to finish the regular season.
Well, I'll buy that. That's the best they could do. They play Oregon actually they have a bye this weekend. Then they play Oregon the next week. Then they play at Nebraska and home against Minnesota. There's no way they go 3-0 against that schedule, in my opinion. I think more likely is that they go 1-2 against that schedule is most likely what they do.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think they lose to Oregon. I think they beat Nebraska. I think they lose to Minnesota.
Yeah, agree.
Buy, sell, hold from NH. Clemson and Florida State regret or will come to regret the lawsuit against the ACC.
I'm gonna buy that because I think what they have been exposed as, you're not as cool. Like you know that kid we had in high school, right, Trev? We all have that guy in high school that like thinks he's really cool, because he goes to some small school or something like that, and then he goes off to college and he's like not that cool. I'm trying to think of the movie. What was that movie from long time ago? It had Jerry O'Connell was like that trip guy that was like considered like, and he comes back and he's like, man, college is not as, I'm not as, I don't get as much in college as I, thought I would. Right. And you think you're cool and you think everybody wants you because you're in your little small conference over here. And then you kind of go, you go play with the big boys, or you say, hey, I want to be with the cool kids. And then you realize like, you're not actually one of the cool kids. You know what I mean? Like you think you are, but you're not. And the fact that the Big 12's making a play for Florida State because the SEC and Big 10 don't want them is like, and then you go out and have this disaster of a season for Florida State. You're like, yeah, that looks pretty dumb. Looks pretty dumb. You're not nearly as cool as you thought you were. And I think especially Florida State is going to regret that, but Clemson is as well. Because I think they could run the risk of destroying the ACC and then being homeless from a conference standpoint, or having to go to the Big 12, or say, hey, we just wanted to get, like, I could see them spinning like, hey, we just wanted to get that contract. We really want to stay in the ACC. We just needed to negotiate a new contract. So that just got us out of the contract. Now we can renegotiate a new contract and try to spin it that way. When in reality, we thought we could go to SEC or Big 10 and they don't want us. And so we're just going to try to save face.
I agree. Buy, sell, hold from NH again. Clemson loses at least one more game before the end of the season.
Buy. I mean, the way that they played this last weekend, they play at Virginia Tech and at Pittsburgh and then home against South Carolina. Yeah, one of those teams could beat them. No question. If not two. That's all. The at least, I'm buying the at least part. Like, we didn't know how good Clemson was. We kept saying that, Trevor. Like, I don't know how good Clemson is. They haven't played anybody. Yeah, they're smashing bad teams. They haven't played anybody. Then they finally play another good team and they get smacked. They get smacked. So, yeah, I'm buying that. What say you, Trevor?
Yeah, I'm going to buy that as well. I could see Clemson kind of going into this shell of like a little bit of like imposter syndrome. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Of, they get smacked by Georgia and then they rattle off some wins against some not good football teams. And then here comes another team that is a quality opponent into your house. And just that game was never close. Yeah. Right. I mean, that game stopped being within doubt after the first quarter, in my opinion. And,
even when it was close at halftime, you knew it was not close. It was not, you knew Louisville was going to do what they did in the second half. Like that was the least surprising second half ever.
Literally. I mean, it was, if I think you and I talked about it. I mean, you and I were texting about it during the game and we were just both kind of like, yeah, like, did we think this was what was going to happen? No, but we talked about all week.
Yeah.
About, like, this is, I mean, Clemson hasn't played anybody, and the two quality opponents that they've played, it hasn't been close. I don't care what the scoreboard says.
And Louisville's better than people think. Now, we both picked Clemson because Louisville had literally never beat them.
Yeah.
And it's like, you got to show me you can win that kind of game first.
Right.
But, so you make a pick for reasons, but then the result's like, yeah, I'm not surprised by that result. I'm not.
Right.
I'm not. Yes, very disappointing performance by Clemson. And what surprised me is like they should be better. Like their D line should be a lot better than it is.
Yeah,
their offensive line should be better than it is. It just Dabo's still trying to run the same offense he ran 15 years ago and not letting Garrett Riley adapt it the way he needs to adapt it. They're still trying to run that college spread, stuff. And it's like, dude, that doesn't work as much when you don't have Travis Etienne and T. Higgins or Mike Williams and Sammy Watkins and, and Justin Ross. It just doesn't work as well when you don't have those dudes. And, let Garrett Riley run what Garrett Riley wants to run. And then maybe things will be a little bit different.
I think Clemson was even, I don't know if they were shell-shocked or what, but like clock management and game management at the end of the game there in the fourth quarter was
so
atrocious.
Weird. Twice he kicked an extra point to make it a 13-point game.
I know. You kicked the extra point twice. There is no sense of urgency with like 7 minutes left. There are games where like you just kind of know you're going to lose, but just to not lose your team. And I'm not saying that Dabo's losing his team because his players love him, right? But just to give the example of like, we're going to fight till the last whatever, like there's 7 minutes left, you're down by 19 points and you're just, moseying up to the line of scrimmage.
Yes.
You run a draw, then you huddle back up. And it's like,
Trevor, tell me this. I said this in the show last night with Bill Bender. I felt like Clemson was playing to make that a more closer loss than they were playing to come back and win.
Yeah, 100%.
They reminded me so much of the Notre Dame Alabama game from 2020, where they weren't trying to actually come back and win. They were trying to run the clock down, score, make it a closer game than it actually was. That's what I felt like watching it. I'm not saying that's what happened, but that's what it felt like. Am I nuts for feeling that way?
No, that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like, you know what, let's just grind it out. Let's just, which is such a sad spot to be in when you're at that point in time, the 11th ranked team in the country playing at home at night. Like I think that's really bad. That's not a good look. Buy, sell, hold from NH. Mike Norvell gets at least one more year as head coach, regardless of the season's record for the Seminoles, because Florida State cannot pay his buyout.
Part of me wants to buy that, and it should be a buy, Trevor. It should be. But I got to be honest. There does get to a point where it's like something to be so bad, there's just no coming back from it. Like they're 1-8 right now. If they lose this weekend in Notre Dame, which they should, they're 1-9. Let's say they do beat Charleston Southern in 2 weeks. All right, whoop-de-doo. The way Florida's playing right now, and Florida's not playing great. They're playing a whole lot better than Florida State. It's not a given that they're going to beat Florida. 2-10 is that might be something you don't recover from. And the other part of it is going to be timing. I hear some rumblings. I don't know if they're legit or not, or if this is just fan talk or donors talking what they would love to happen, but it's not real. There's a good chance that Deion Sanders is going to have a pretty good year at Colorado this year, at least to some degree. And his kids are both going to be gone. All three of his kids are going to be gone after this year, right? Shador, Shiloh, and Travis Hunter are all going to be gone after this year. And if they, if you look at Colorado, and we'll get to their schedule here a little bit more because we have a question about Colorado, but they're 6-2 right now, Trevor, and they play Texas Tech, Utah, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State. I mean, at least 8 wins is not at all out of the realm of possibility against that schedule. 8-4 year for the team he has is a really good coaching year for Deion Sanders. It is. This is not a super talented team outside of 4 or 5 guys. And a lot of the talent they do have outside of a couple top 2 or 3 is really young guys, and they've improved a lot since the beginning of the year too. That's a sign of good coaching. If you're Florida State, you're like, yeah, we have a big buyout, but this is our chance to get Deion. And there'd be a lot of whatever money people they do have would be probably more than willing to pay that buyout if it meant getting Deion. To go after 10-2, 2-10, some things you just can't recover from, Trevor. And I worry that Mike Norvell, who I think has done overall a good job at Florida State, would the timing, Trevor, so huge. If there was no somebody like Deion out there, an alum of Florida State, that's why I bring up Deion as an alum. He's a Florida native. He played at Florida State, was arguably the greatest player ever to play at Florida State in the conversation, in my opinion, with guys like Charlie Ward and Peter Warwick and guys like that. You know what I mean? Yeah, that might be too much for them to pass up. And it'd be unfortunate because I still think Mike Norvell is a good football coach. He's He went to the well one too many times for the portal, and he didn't do enough to build up high school recruiting. And that's gonna be ultimately the thing that does him in, is he doesn't recruit high school kids the way he needs to.
I'm glad you brought up the transfer portal and the recruiting, because there's a lot of people that kind of look at this and say one bad season. It's like, well, this was kind of in the making if you look and see what it takes to build a program, right? Like, yes, on paper, statistically, this is an outlier of a season for Mike Norvell, just as a head coach going back to Memphis, right? Statistically, this is the outlier. But this is a product of what happens when you put too much emphasis on getting one and done guys. You know, sometimes it works out in your favor, and sometimes you go 13-0 and win a conference. I don't really think you can even say, but sometimes you could go 2-10. Like, I don't think that that's the other side of the coin. So I'm with you. I think timing plays a huge factor. I think Dion most likely being available after this is another factor. So, which is tough, because I do like Mike Norvell as a head coach, but he just didn't do a good job building a program, but he does a good job coaching, if that makes sense. So that's where I'm at with that one, man.
Total sense.
Buy, sell, hold from Law Dog. The Irish will win all of their remaining games by 14 or more points.
I buy that. I mean, that's what they've done all year. You know, the only game they've played this year that was competitive like that was the Louisville game. I mean, every other win they've played game they've had is by 10 or more points. And the 10 was to the number 14 team in the country, and the 7 was to the number 22 team in the country, like current ranking. And I don't think Army or any of those teams is that as good as those two teams. So I buy that. I mean, some people may say that's quite a homer take, but I mean, they're playing a really good group of 5 team, a 1-8 Power 5 team, a Power 4 team, a 4-4 Power 4 team, and a 4-5 Power 4 team. And Notre Dame is a team that has won their games by 10, 59, 25, 7, 42, 18, and 37. And will probably win this game by more than 14.
I was about to say, like, I think we would be looking at a situation where, for the majority of the opponents in this remaining 4, if Notre Dame doesn't win by at least 14, we're kind of having some questions.
USC would be the one exception.
If they, agreed.
Yeah, because if they beat USC by 10, you could say, well, that's worse than anybody else beat them. LSU lost to them. Penn State beat them by 3. Everyone else beat them by 7, 6, 1, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I still say that's a game you should win by 14.
Yeah.
I still say that it is.
I couldn't imagine what the post-game show is going to be like if we're sitting there. It's like Notre Dame coming off of a 28-14 victory over Florida State. It's like, yo, what happened? You know what I mean? Or like senior day for the Irish, they have a 35-21 victory over Virginia. It's like, what are we doing? You know?
Yeah.
So I'm with you. Another buy, sell, hold from Law Dog. Notre Dame will host a home playoff game.
That's an easy buy for me. I have them right now as the number 7 seed. I think that at the very worst that they'll be is an 8 seed. The very worst. So, yeah.
Another playoff buy, sell, hold from Law Dog. Clemson will make the playoff.
Sell. I had them in the playoff last week, but with the schedule they have left, I don't know. Like, they've played 2 good teams this year, and both teams embarrassed them. They have a couple more good teams left. I mean, South Carolina, the way that South Carolina's played, South Carolina had 1 bad game against Ole Miss, and they've been competitive in all their other losses. They're right now they don't have a better record, but they are a better football team right now than Clemson is right now. And they have confidence they can beat Clemson because they have beaten Clemson recently. So I'm gonna say sell. I don't see them beating. Like, I'm not saying they're going to lose all these games, but between at Tech, at Pitt, and home against South Carolina, I think they lose one of them. And I don't know that their path to getting in the ACC title game is going to be very good. And if they don't get in the ACC title game, what's the resume builder they're hanging their hat on as a 2-loss team? Like, Bama as a 2-loss team can say, hey, we beat Georgia. We beat LSU. That's who they'd have to beat. What's Clemson? Hey, we beat Virginia Tech. They lost to Vanderbilt. Yeah, but Vanderbilt beat Alabama. You know what I mean? Like, they lost to Georgia State, right? Like, that's not what you want to be hanging your hat on. Oh, we beat a 5-5 for scrappy Virginia Tech team. Oh, we beat a Pitt team, not as bad as SMU beat them, but we beat them. You know what I mean? Like, they'd have to destroy their next 4 opponents to have even any thought of being in the playoff conversation. Would they drop all the way to like 20 or 21 last night?
I think they're 23rd because
They dropped
22nd.
way down. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You're correct. So
Yeah.
let me pull this up. The playoff rankings from last night. Because I think you're right. I think they dropped down even further. 23rd. I don't see that. I don't see how there's any way they get up as an at-large. They'd have to somehow find a back door into the ACC title game, because that's a possibility. Because they do only, I mean, they have 1 loss. If there's some upsets, they could maybe sneak in. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, they would have to take care of business against Pitt and then hope that SMU loses to either Virginia, Boston College, or Cal.
It's not looking good.
No. Good. Enjoy the Cheez-It Bowl. Buy, sell, hold from D-Troll Hunter.
Ouch.
USC swapping quarterbacks could create a perception change in the USC matchup if they go on a mini run-up to the Notre Dame game.
Yeah, perception-wise. Yeah, I could see that. I love that he said perception, because they'd still be 6-5, right? And have beaten Nebraska and UCLA. So I don't know that it makes people think like, oh, geez, USC is like beating a ranked team. But I think you can say, hey, look, this is a better like, let's say USC goes out and just smacks Nebraska and UCLA, and they're like, you should have made this. It'll be kind of like how people have overreacted to Marcel Reed being the starting quarterback at this past against LSU. Like that same kind of overreaction. Like, oh, if he would have been the starting quarterback all year, they would have, been this, and this, and this. And look what Notre Dame did to him, right? If they go out there and smack their next 2 opponents with him at quarterback, yes, I think that could be the case. I don't know that it'll happen. I think he's a nice quarterback. I think he's still kind of a little bit raw. He's a little bit slow delivery, decent reads, good arm, good athlete. He's a good player. I just don't know that he's oh my gosh, what a great player. Because if he was, he'd have beat out Miller Moss. And they would have gone to him a lot sooner than game 10.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's Miller Moss's fault that they're 4-5. I don't. I think that's just a PR move to just see if there's something else that they can do to spark something within the team, I guess. I don't know. Like, I'm not saying that Miller Moss has played lights out, but
right. He just turns the ball over too much. That's the thing that kills him. Yeah. But the problem is they're putting in a kid who also turns the ball over a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, this kid threw 10 picks last year, 17 touchdowns and 10 picks. He threw 353 passes, 10 interceptions. I don't know that that's necessarily the answer to that, but you got to try to give your team a spark. And I think they've done a poor job putting Miller Moss in position to be successful. They keep asking that kid to be Caleb Williams and carry that team, and they just won't run the ball. When they try to run the ball, they're actually pretty decent at running the football. They just don't do it, and they haven't helped him at all.
Yeah, I mean, you're starting to see what kind of coach Lincoln Riley is when he doesn't have a Heisman caliber quarterback. Now, I will say, like, Lincoln Riley is also known for developing Heisman caliber quarterbacks, because you can make the argument that Baker Mayfield wasn't Baker Mayfield when he was at Texas Tech until he got there. Right. I get the arguments, but yeah. Buy, sell, hold from D-Troll Hunter. Georgia beating Ole Miss and eliminating them from the playoffs will result in the first big job opening in college football.
I'm assuming he means once Lane's eliminated, that then Lane then looks to take somebody fires their coach to then make a run at Lane, would be my guess of what they're talking about there, right? Because if Lane's in a playoff, you're not in a rush to fire your coach right now to negotiate with Lane, because he's just going to be like, look, dude, I'm not leaving my team before the playoff, right? So I think that's what he means. I could see that. I don't know if schools view Lane Kiffin the way that fans and media do. That's my only thing. Like, I know there's a lot of people, we want Lane Kiffin at Florida. I don't know that you actually do want that at Florida. Yeah, I don't know that you do. And sometimes reputation can mean more than can be, the substance is the sauce is a little bit maybe better than the substance, I guess, is a way of saying it, right? Like the flash is a little bit more than the substance, and that's how I've always kind of felt about Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
I actually think it's the opposite. I think a win over Georgia could cause that. Because, like, hey, this guy can win those big games, And, yeah, we may have to wait a little bit, but the playoff is like it starts in mid-December now. It's not like you got to wait till after January. I mean, maybe they make a run, but, you can start negotiating now if that were to happen. But I don't know that ADs and presidents look at Lane the same way the media does, right? That's just kind of where I'm at on that.
Sure. Another buy-sell hold from D-Troll Hunter. Go Huskies. Please figure out how to play on and win your first road game of the season and beat Penn State.
Bye, man. Bye. Yes, please do. Bye.
Yeah. Another buy-sell hold from D-Troll Hunter. Clark Lee should be one of the 2 leading candidates for Coach of the Year, along with Curt Cignetti.
I don't. I'm gonna sell. I think Coach Lee has done a great job this year at Vanderbilt. Just a great job. Just love the guy. Great guy. Doing an excellent job with that football team. I just think there's other coaches doing a better job. I just do. Obviously, Curt Cignetti's one. That's obviously kind of a big one. But here's a couple others that, as good as the job that Clark Lee's doing, these are a couple other guys that I think are doing just as good of a job, if not a better job, in my opinion. Jeff Monken at Army. 6-6 team is now 8-0 ranked. Rhett Lashley had a 4-loss football team last year in the group of 5, or 3-loss football team in the group of 5 last year. Lost his only 2 games to Power 5 teams. Now he's 8-1, and if they win out, they're in the college football playoff. And I think they've got a shot to be in if they win out in the regular season and lose a close game to Miami. You know what I mean? They just beat a ranked Pitt team, smacked the ranked Pitt team, beat a good Louisville team on the road. I mean, he's doing a heck of a job. Is at SMU. He's doing a heck of a job. You talk about rebounding from a terrible team. How about the job? And I can't stand the guy, but how about the job Pat Narduzzi's doing at Pitt right now? I mean, they're 7-1 and ranked in the top 25. They were 3-9 last year and not competitive. And Pat Narduzzi, you say, well, Vanderbilt plays in the SEC. Very fair, but Pat Narduzzi doesn't have a loss to Georgia State on his schedule. And he actually has 2 Power 4 wins out of conference. So, he's done a great job. Kalami Sitake at BYU has done a great job with that football team. I mean, there were people talking about him being on the hot seat. They were 5-7 last year. I mean, they lost to Kansas, got blown up by TCU, got blown up by Texas, got blown up by West Virginia, got blown up by Iowa State, lost to Oklahoma, lost to Oklahoma State. And right now, Trevor, they're undefeated with 2 wins over top 25 teams, and they're a top 10 football team who also has a non-conference win over a top 15 team on the road against a team that has a shot to be in the playoff. Like, he has done a heck of a job. So, and I think you have to throw Deion Sanders, if they keep winning, into this conversation. So, yeah, Coach Lee has done a great job. And because he's in the SEC, he'll probably get a little bit higher on the ranks. And I don't want to take anything away from Coach Lee, because I think he's done a great job. But he's got a 3-loss football team when there's just guys who have done somewhat equal turnarounds, like Pat Narduzzi, like Kalami Sitake, Rhett Lashley hasn't done a turnaround, but boy, what a great job he's done taking them into the ACC playing the way they have. I mean, the job Mario Cristobal has done so far this year has been really good. Miami wasn't any good last year. Now that he's got him as a top 5 football team. So I love what Coach Lee's done. He's the SEC Coach of the Year, in my opinion, no question about it. But National Coach of the Year, I think there's just some guys who've just done better. He deserves to be in the conversation. If Trevor and I were on the committee, we'd have a list of probably about 10 coaches we would work through. Coach Lee would absolutely be on that conversation, and we would have a lot of good things to say. But just looking at what guys have done and what they're coming back from, there just are more than one or 2 guys. And Curt Cignetti's the no-brainer right now. But there's some other guys that belong in this conversation. If Curt Cignetti goes out and gets smacked by Ohio State next weekend and BYU keeps winning, I think he gets passed by Coach Sitake from BYU. You know what I mean? Like, there's just a lot of coaches doing a great job this year. And Coach Lee's doing a great job. It's just not as great as what some of these other coaches are doing, in my opinion. That's my thoughts. And please don't take this as me taking anything. I love Clark Lee. You know, I'm so what I like about him, and this is what I Notre Dame's last 3 defensive coordinators, and I don't know Al Golden, you know, but you could throw him into this all that well. Like, I haven't got to know him since he's been at Notre Dame. He just haven't been able to develop a relationship with him like I did with the last 3 defensive coordinators. But I had a lot of interactions with him when I was a coach. And he was always gracious and kind. And, you know, just he'd see D3 coaches, we'd talk to him and we'd ask him questions. And he was always gracious with his time at a lot of these D1 coaches, like, you know, get away from me. Who are you? You know, so I got a lot of respect for him. Marcus Freeman is a human being. I think the world of Clark Lee, Mike Elko, like, they're all great guys. So this isn't any kind of knock on them. And I think all of them have done great jobs this season as head coaches and defensive coordinator for Mike Elko, for Al Golden. It's just that as great of a job as Coach Lee has done, there's just others who have done a better job. There just are. So I can't have him in that finalist list. He'd be in my semifinalist list of 10, but he's not in my finalist list.
Buy, sell, hold from D-Troll Hunter. Oklahoma versus Missouri is must not watch TV. It would now be
that would meant to be 2. I didn't put a space in between those. That's my bad.
Oh,
so that first one is yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So that's my bad.
Gotcha.
Bye. That's going to be an ugly game. Very ugly game.
Yeah. The final score might be 9-7. Who knows? Yeah. That's going to be a rough one. Another buy, sell, hold from D-Troll Hunter. It would now be a mistake to go back to Connor Wegman.
It's only a mistake if you don't think he gives you the best chance to win. If you think he gives you the best chance to win, why not play him? Like, I think it was a mistake to bail on him as easily as they did. I still don't agree with that. Unless there's something else we aren't seeing off the field. You know, work ethic's not there, attitude's not there. Like, unless there's something like that off the field, I don't think it was I've said this before, we need to rehash it. It's not the move I would have made. But but you also have to be careful. You can't get into this musical quarterbacks thing or your season can go south real quick.
I agree. I think it's a weird balance because you have to go with who gives you the best opportunity to win a game, but you also need to give your quarterbacks a chance to get in any sort of rhythm. Like, at some point, like, if you think that it's a break even of who gives you the best chance to win you football games, just pick with a guy and stick with him, because it's the lack of continuity on offense kills teams. Absolutely kills them.
Yeah.
Buy, sell, hold from Jaylen G. New USC starting quarterback Jaden Mavia, and his running ability will be a significant upgrade over Miller Moss.
I don't know that I agree with that. One thing that we can all agree on, right, is that Lincoln Riley, for all his flaws, knows quarterbacks pretty well, right? I mean, can we at least agree on that? I don't think he's a very good head coach. I think his play calling has become a little bit boring. I think he knows quarterbacks. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's a very fair statement.
Yeah. I also don't think the kid that they brought in from UNLV is the runner that people think he is. I mean, he ran for 277 yards last year in 13 games, 3 touchdowns. Highest yardage total is 40 yards. I just don't think he's the athlete and runner that people think he is. So I think he'll give them an element they haven't had. They might run some read zone stuff, and they add some wrinkles that Nebraska and UCLA aren't prepared for, and that might give them that initial spark. But as soon as you get some film on him, I don't think he's that kind of dynamic. He's not like Riley Leonard. You know, he's not that kind of athlete. He's just not that, in my opinion. He's a nice quarterback, but he's not that. So he might be an upgrade because they need somebody that can maneuver better. Like, he's a better athlete. And he's better in the pocket than Miller Moss is as far as evading and avoiding and things like that. But it might be a better fit, but I don't know that he's a significant upgrade over Miller Moss. And if he was a significant upgrade, I think a guy that's produced 3 number 1 overall draft picks at quarterback would probably have gone to him sooner than 9 games in. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm selling it too, just for significant. If it was that significant, they wouldn't have waited until they were 4 and 5.
Yeah. And I think her putting in significant makes this a more entertaining submission.
Absolutely.
It's like, well, yeah, I don't know how much worse he's going to be. Miller Moss is a better passer. This kid's a better runner. They both turn the ball over too much. It might be an upgrade. We might have a more, a quicker conversation, but significant is where you kind of have to think a little bit more about it and why I would say sell.
Buy, sell, hold from Traverse City, ND. Mike Norvell gets fired after the Notre Dame game.
Sell. I just don't see that happening. Yeah.
Buy, sell, hold again. Army will be ranked for the Notre Dame game.
Buy. I think they're going to beat North Texas this weekend, Trev. I do. It'll be a battle, especially, and I don't know the status of Bryson Daly. I need to look into that. I don't know if he's playing or not, so I'll have to look into that. But assuming he plays, I definitely think they definitely win and are ranked if he plays. If he doesn't play, it could get a little bit more hairy. But I still think that they win. They can control the clock. North Texas can score a lot, but they also don't have a very good defense. They've given up 504 yards rushing in their last 2 games to Memphis and Tulane. So their run defense, not so hot. Tulane's a good running team, right? Memphis is an average running team, to be honest with you, who a week later ran for 62 yards and lost to UTSA 2 weeks later. So if Bryson Daly plays, they'll win and they'll still be ranked. Because you're not going to put them in the top 25 and then drop them out after they beat the best team they've played all year, I don't think, right? At 9-0. I don't see that. So, yeah, I'll buy that.
I also just looked into it, and Bryson Daly right now is questionable for the game. His injury is still undisclosed. So,
yeah, that's weird, which is weird.
Yeah, it was listed as injury or illness.
Yeah, very weird. So they said it was something that happened the game before. It's kind of like the Benjamin Morrison injury. It's like we still don't know what it was or when it happened.
Yeah. Another buy, sell, hold from Traverse City, ND. The 2025 recruiting class finishes with 27 commits, including 4 wide receiver commits and 4 linebacker commits.
27. So, let me just do something here real quick. So let me go quarterback, running back, wide receiver. Let's see, tight end. O-line gets them there. Let's see, Burgess. Okay, so yeah, I have them getting to 27, and either they'll get a 6th defensive lineman or a 4th linebacker. I don't know. Like right now, I'm just not sure that they get both Owusu Boateng and Farema. I'll know more after this weekend. I definitely think they get 4 receiver commits. I think 27 is the target number minimum. So I'll buy that. The 4 linebacker commits, I'm a little sold on. So talk to me again after this weekend, and I'll have a better sense of where they are with that one. Yeah.
Traverse City, ND, buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame will average over 40 points on offense and less than 12 points on defense in the remaining 4 games.
I feel like we got asked this one 2 different ways last time. 40 points. I think we bought. We bought on that one, right? And then we sold on the 12 points, sub 12 points for the next 4 games.
Yeah,
because I think we got this on Friday in a mailbag. So I'll buy 40 plus points. I'll sell sub 12 because I think they'll be like right at where they are, between 12 and 13. They've been, all year really.
Buy, sell, hold. Florida State will turn the ball over 3+ times in a wet, cold night game environment this Saturday.
I know it's going to be chilly, but I didn't know that it was going to. I haven't looked far enough ahead to see what the if it was going to be rainy. I don't remember it.
I don't think it is.
I thought the rain was supposed to be gone by Friday, is what Angela was telling me. Right now, it's 5% chance of rain on Saturday. No, I'm sorry. 6% chance of rain on Saturday. So we're supposed to get some Sunday morning showers. Now, there's a chance if any of y'all have lived in northern Indiana like Trevor and I have, storms that are supposed to come on Monday can come on Saturday. Storms that come on Sunday can show up on Saturday. Storms supposed to show up on Saturday can come on Friday or Thursday. That's just welcome to northern Indiana weather. But as of right now, it's 6% chance of rain. So, but it'll be cold. Will they turn the ball over 3+ times? Yeah. But, bro, I'd buy that if the answer was they're playing in a 70-degree, calm, perfect weather, wonderful conditions, best conditions they've ever played in ever. And you'd have thought that they transplanted San Diego weather to South Bend. I'd still say 3 turnovers because that's just kind of who they are.
Yep.
3 against Memphis, 3 against SMU, 4 against Duke, 2 against Carolina. Yeah.
I like that. They would turn the ball over 3 times if they were playing in 68 and breezy weather at home.
Yeah. I think so. I'll buy that.
Buy. Traverse City ND with another buy, sell, hold. We will hear the song X Go and give it to you 2+ times on Saturday night.
Once. I think we'll hear it once. I think they'll make that mistake once and then never make it again.
Yeah.
For those who may not know that, that's the song they play. It's the DMX song that they play whenever Xavier Watts intercepts a pass or recovers a fumble.
Yep.
So,
buy, sell, hold. Ben Morrison will return for the 2025 season.
I'm going to hope by that one. I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know Benjamin personally. I don't know his family. I don't know his agent. I don't know any of that. I'm just going to hopefully he comes back for his own sake. I think he could use another year of getting stronger, getting healthy, restoring, like rebuilding his draft stock. I could also say he does, and he's going to make a lot of money at Notre Dame next year doing that. But I could also see him saying, hey, look, I don't want to take a chance of another injury. I'm just going to go to the NFL, take my chances, get to my second contract. I don't know where his thought process is. I hope for his sake and for Notre Dame's sake that he comes back. And as good as Christian Gray and Leonard Moore are, wouldn't you all rather have those two plus Benjamin Morrison? It's one heck of a secondary. So I'm going to hope by that one.
I am going to sell it just so I can be happily surprised.
Nice.
That's where I'm at. Thank you.
I like that.
Buy, sell, hold from Poe Welch 84. Notre Dame lands both Nolan James and Antoine Parham this weekend.
Sell that they do it this weekend. I think if I had to predict today, I would buy that Notre Dame lands both of those players. Kids just don't commit during the weekend as often. They go home, they think through things, they get the graphics made, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to sell that they do it this weekend, but I like where Notre Dame is coming into the weekend.
Buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame beats Florida State by 3 scores.
Sell. I think it'll be more than that. I'm taking his comment literally.
I'm with you. I'm selling it too because I think it will be more. Yeah. Notre Dame is Lincoln Riley's last game as USC's head coach. Buy, sell, hold.
Buy. I buy. I've said this before. I think he's done after this year, probably by his own desire. But if he drops either the Nebraska or UCLA game and then gets blasted by Notre Dame, it may not be his choice.
Yeah, I agree. I think both avenues lead to him being gone. It's just a question of will it be his choice or will it be like a force? Will it be a resignation or a forced resignation?
Right.
One of those.
Right. I mean, look, Clay Helton wasn't a very good football coach. Clay Helton had 1 losing season at USC. So in his first 3 full years at USC, Clay Helton had 2 10+ win seasons. Lincoln Riley's going to have 1. That's it.
Buy, sell, hold from Ballpeen Shillelagh. Notre Dame's trend of breaking teams continues, and Notre Dame puts up major points on both Florida State and USC in near identical, almost shutouts.
Sell. I mean, look, USC still scores. And they're going to score at least probably 10 to 14 points, 17 points. You know what I mean? Like, You shut that off. I mean, no one else has shut them down. I mean, they scored 30 against Penn State. That's pretty decent defense. You know, I mean, they're going to score at least something. You know, I don't see that. No, I mean, I love that. I would love that. I could see you doing that against Florida State. I'd be shocked if. And USC's defense has not been one that's just getting shredded every week. You know what I mean? Like, their defense has been pretty scrappy. D'Anton Lynn's done a nice job with that football team. I mean, guys, look, USC's struggling right now, but let's not forget that their losses. I'm going to repeat this again. Their losses this season have been by 3 points, 7 points, 3 points in a game they lost on literally in the final seconds, 7 points in another game they literally lost in the final seconds, a 3-point loss they lost in overtime, a 1-point loss where again they literally lost in the last minute of the game, and then the Washington game this past weekend, which I believe Washington took the lead in the fourth quarter. I don't believe it was final seconds like the others, if I recall, but it was late in the game. I'm actually going to look that up when they took the lead. But USC was down 20-6, came back, took a lead. Washington scored 13 minutes in the fourth quarter. So they took a lead in the fourth quarter, and USC got stuffed at the goal line. So, I mean, they've literally led in the fourth quarter of every single game they've played this season. Every single one. So can Notre Dame do that to them? I guess, but that's not what USC has been this year. That's just not. And they've only given up over 30 points in a game once, and that was over in an overtime game against Penn State.
Yeah,
so I'm selling that one.
I'd be ecstatic if it happened, but I'm selling it too.
Yeah.
I'm shutting out a USC offense is just like, again, kind of like what we talked about in a little bit of a different light. Don't just pay attention to the overall record, right? Like we've talked about that with Florida State. Like USC is still a team that is talented. Like a lot of people just assume that if you aren't a 1 or 2 loss team, then you're just awful, which is just not the case, right? So, yeah, I'm with you, Brian. I'm selling it. Buy, sell, hold from Airball VW, a 3-loss team with wins over multiple ranked teams and close losses to ranked or bowl eligible teams should be considered for an at-large spot in the college football playoff. Sorry to poach Cocky Irish's post. This could be restated. No team with 3 losses should be considered for an at-large spot in the college football playoffs.
Let's work with the restatement. I'm selling that. If a 3-loss team is one of the 12 best teams in college football, they should be in the college football playoff. If you go out there and play like Notre Dame's schedule in 2017 and you go 9-3, you're probably 11 or 10 or the 10 to 12 type team potentially, as long as your games are close. What would have hurt Notre Dame is they had the blowout loss. But let's say they would have played Miami in a 4-quarter dogfight, and they would have had a 1-point loss to a number 2 Georgia, a 3-point loss to a top 10 Miami team, and then a close game with another good team. You should be considered if you are one of the best. I'll take a 3-loss team with a brutal schedule over an 11-1 team that played nobody. I just would, because that team is better, you know. And I try not to get into what would this team's record be if they played that schedule, but to a degree, you kind of got to look at that. So I'm not, with no other context, I am not going to say they should never be considered. The whole, like, here's a perfect example. 2016 USC started that year 1-3. Got blown out by Bama, beat by Stanford, lost to Utah. By the end of the year, nobody wanted to play that team. They were without a doubt a top 10 football team. They absolutely would have deserved to be in a 12-team playoff, 100%. Because over the course of the year, they were one of the best teams now, but they have 3 losses. Cool, which is why they're not a 2 seed, which is how they're playing right now. That's why they're a 9 or 10 or 11 seed. But it's like Notre Dame. You can't ignore Notre Dame's losses to Northern Illinois. I'm not. If I was ignoring it, I'd say Notre Dame should be the number 2 seed, not the 8 to 10, like we said last week. I'm not ignoring it. I'm taking that into account, which is why they have them as an 8 to 10 seed. So I think a team like that, if their resume genuinely deserves it, should be considered for an at-large spot. I'm not saying they should be in, because I need to know the rest of the resumes. But should they be considered? Like, should a 9-3 Georgia team get in over an 11-1 Iowa State team? Heck to the yes. Because Iowa State would be 6-6 against Georgia's schedule. You know, so you got to look at the quality of the teams and the quality of how those records are put together, in my opinion. So yes, I'm gonna sell that.
Yeah, I'm with that.
Trev, I think that might be it. Let me just go look here and see what the last question was. I think, no, we have a couple more, but it looks like it's doing that thing to me where it's not letting me. There we go.
All righty.
We're going to try to rapid fire as much as we can through these because I know IB Nation Sports Talk has already started, and I know you're losing your voice a little bit because you're sick. So let's just rapid fire through these as best we can.
All right, let's do it. Buy, sell, hold from Airball VW. More than 5 USC players will opt out of the remaining games between now and the Notre Dame game.
I'm going to sell. They've only had, one guy opt out so far?
Yeah.
They haven't quit. I mean, they battle. I'll sell that.
Sell. Buy, sell, hold from Magis 16. Sorry if I butchered that. Gerby Lambert will be starter at right tackle in 2025. And Knapp will battle for right guard or center in 2025. Offensive line will be a strength in 2025.
All right. Hold on the first one.
Yep.
Buy on the second one. I think Knapp will battle for a starting spot inside next year. And the O-line will be a strength in 2025. I absolutely buy that one. Yeah. I just want to see Gerby in the spring before I start talking about he's going to beat out a current starter.
Yeah.
Who's played solid football.
Yep.
Not great, but solid football.
Yep.
It wouldn't shock me. It's possible. So I want to hold on it.
Buy, sell, hold from Trey Castanon. If Notre Dame comes out of this bye with the same level of confidence while also having the same growth as a team as last bye, we become 2014 Ohio State and win the national championship.
Whew, I love that optimism. It's possible, Trey. I'm sitting back watching football this week, and I'm thinking, and I was talking with a buddy of mine about this. There's not a team in the country Notre Dame can't beat. There's also a lot of teams that can beat Notre Dame. I mean, I think we said it last week, Trev. There's like 7, 8 teams that can just beat anybody right now, and you'd have to throw Bama in that conversation. And Notre Dame is one of those. So, yeah, if they keep getting better and better each week, by the time we get to the postseason, yeah, I think they could be that. You think about it, a really athletic quarterback, a great run game. Notre Dame would have a better defense than Ohio State had in 2014. Their offense wouldn't be as explosive as the 2014 Ohio State would. It'd be kind of a wash. I could see that. Yeah, I'm going to buy it just as from the standpoint of it's an option. It's possible. It's not a nutty thing to say because, again, would I buy that if there was a 2020 Alabama or a 2019 LSU or a 2021 Georgia or a 2018 Clemson out there? Nope, I would not buy it because I'd say, no, there's too many injuries, too many flaws. But do I think Notre Dame can be Georgia? I watched Carson Beck throw interception after interception against mediocre defenses, and I think you're telling me he's just going to rip up an Al Golden defense? That's where we're going to go with, huh? Okay, cool. Because they're Georgia, right? He ain't Stetson Bennett. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I buy that because it's possible. I'm not buying it because I'm predicting it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm buying it as a possibility. The way that I look at it is if we just fast forward and you tell me who is going to be in the national championship, right? Like if you told me it was going to be Oregon, Georgia, I'd believe you. If you told me it was going to be Notre Dame, Ohio State, I would believe you. If you told me it was going to be Bama, Oregon, I would believe you. Like it's just college football is wide open right now, man. And I think that's what makes it so exciting. But I think Notre Dame absolutely should be in that conversation. There's about 7, 8 teams sitting up there at the top right now that all could beat anybody at any given time. I firmly believe that. Buy, sell, hold from BK's last brain cell. Notre Dame is now favored to win commitment of both top-rated linebacker targets.
Hold. I just want to see how this weekend goes with Nathaniel Usu-Boateng before I say that one. Just so for now, hold. And that's a better question for you to ask me on the message board because I can get it into a little bit more detail.
Buy, sell, hold from Salty Virginia Peanuts. Mr. Denbrock is saving the double pass play, a backward pass from Mr. Leonard to the great one, then a deep pass from the great one to Mr. Collins for a playoff game.
Sure. I love it. Let's do it. Bye. Let's do it. Bye. Yeah, I can dig that. I'll buy that one. Sure.
I'm here for it.
Sure. I love it.
I'm here for that. Buy, sell, hold from Double Bogey. BYU loses and Boise wins out and gets the first round bye.
Well, considering that's in my college football playoff projection that I put up today, I'm going to buy that. Now, I believe Double Bogey's submission was put in before I published my article, so that was not a sarcastic comment to him. It was just more of a fun comment. That's exactly what I have. I have BYU losing a regular season game and then winning the ACC or Big 12, and then I have Boise running the table, being 12-1 and getting in ahead of BYU. So yeah, buy that.
Colorado plays for the Big 12 championship.
Sell. I mean, it's a nice story, right? And they've only had one conference loss. So if they run the table, they got a shot. But they play at Texas Tech. They play at Kansas still. Kansas is scrappy. You know, they play Oklahoma State at home, Utah at home. I just feel like those 4 games, they're going to lose one of them. So I'm gonna sell that. It's a great story, but I just don't see them going 10-2. I just don't.
I sell it. They need some stuff to happen above them as well, I think. Buy, sell, hold. Jeremiah Love has 5 or more touchdowns in the final 4 games.
Yeah, that's basically just saying he's going to stay on the same pace he's been all year. Yeah. He'll have 4 games with at least one, and then one of those 4 games will have a second. Yeah, it's buy. He's been doing that all year.
Yeah, absolute buy. Buy, sell, hold from Joe Allen, 72. Indiana will drop below Notre Dame in the playoff standings after they lose badly to Ohio State.
I mean, that's an easy buy. The more interesting one, Joe, would be, will they drop below Notre Dame if they lose a close game to Ohio State? Because, look, we've already seen a team that has a crap schedule that was far less competitive in Indiana lose to Ohio State and get ranked high because of their loss to Ohio State. So why not believe it for Indiana as well? No, I don't think so, because they have an IU on their helmet and not that ugly doll crap white helmet with the blue stripe down the middle. You know, so if they lose badly, they're sell. They're not, or buy. They absolutely will drop below Notre Dame if Ohio State whoops them. Easy buy. Yeah. Easy buy.
Absolutely. Buy, sell, hold from Joe Allen, 72. A 2-loss conference champion in the ACC and Big 12 has the potential to get Notre Dame bumped out of the playoffs if the team they beat gets their first loss in the conference championship game.
I mean, it's possible. So buy that it has the potential to do so. It's unlikely. With all the games that ever played between teams ahead of Notre Dame's not going to sit at 10. They're going to climb up to at least 8. At worst case scenario, Notre Dame will be 8 if they just went out the way they should, because you're going to have a lot of those teams kind of fall behind it. Because, like, if Miami gets beat by a 2-loss, let's say Clemson, they're a 2-loss ACC team. All right. Clemson goes 10-2, somehow sneaks into the ACC title game and beats SMU. I don't think Notre Dame's getting knocked out, because I think Miami would fall behind Notre Dame. I don't think they'd be ranked ahead of Notre Dame. I mean, I don't see it. So I'm going to sell that just because I don't think anybody in the ACC is good enough to stay ahead of Notre Dame with a loss, especially when you look at Notre Dame's resume against the ACC this year is going to be relatively impressive. I mean, you're going to have a win over a ranked ACC team. You're going to have a 18-point win over another ACC team with a winning record. You're going to have a 42-point win over another ACC team. Who knows what your margin of victory is going to be your next 2 weeks against the ACC. So, I mean, you have a resume you can compare to other ACC teams. So I'm going to sell that one. It's something that could potentially happen, Joe. I'm just selling that it's likely. I think it's highly unlikely.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And I do believe this is the last one.
Okay. Buy, sell, hold from Sean McCardle. Buy, sell, hold for each. Notre Dame will land a commitment from Parham. Buy, sell, hold.
Buy.
From Nolan James.
Buy.
From Madden Paramo.
Buy.
Waverly or Olesh.
Sell.
And Nathaniel Owusu Boateng.
Hold. And that's it. Trev, I'm not going to be that jerk and make you have to send us out of here when you have no voice. But I appreciate you being a trooper and being with us. Hey, folks, as you leave here, go to IB Nation Sports Talk. Guys are doing their Wednesday mailbag, so go check that out. For Trevor Trovers, I'm Brian Driscoll, folks. Y'all know what to do on your way out of here. Also, hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell, share this podcast. After you're done with IB Nation Sports Talk, come back to boards.irishbreakdown.com and sign up for what we got going on the premium message board. You will dig what we've got going on. So have a great night, everybody. We'll talk to you all again tomorrow when we do our keys to victory. We'll do our game predictions. We're going to preview this weekend's games and just spend some time with y'all. So we appreciate it very much. For Trev, I'm Bryan. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. We'll talk to you again here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.